What we've decided to do is we're going to take the Patton Lane appeal first, 2913, then the other residential appeal, because they're both going to be fairly complicated and quick, and we won't have to have everybody waiting around while we deal with the more complicated case of the Radnor Chester Road properties. So first, we'd like to call appeal 2913. The applicant, James J. and Francine Christie, property located at 103 Patton Lane and zoned R1, contends addition to an existing covered porch is permitted by right pursuant to Section 280, 101B of the zoning code, and the alternative seeks a variance and/or de minimis variance from Section 280, 15C of the zoning code.
That's the package for that.
If you need.
What do you need?
Just clear the table off, because that's where we put all the exhibits down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I have my reasons for doing this. Is anyone here appearing on behalf for this case? Anyone besides the applicant? Are there any neighbors, any protestants, anything? No, okay. This is the Patton Lane case.
Appeal 2913.
Like, I think we can make this easy just by having them verify that the facts stated in the application and survey are true and correct, and I think we can make this.
If you're ready, raise your right hand, please. Would you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you'll state your names one at a time.
James.
Francine Christie.
James Christie.
And I've marked, Jim, I've marked as A1 the application on this matter. Have you had an opportunity to review it?
Yes.
And is everything stated therein true and correct?
Yes, it is.
And just looking at what we've marked as A3, and currently your house has a porch that's actually enclosed on one side.
Right.
That is in this area that I'm pointing to with the pointer. And what you're intending to do is put an addition on to that house, and actually which extends that porch, but it is no closer than the existing nonconformity, which is 4.5 feet from the street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you reviewed the other exhibits that I have marked from A1 through A4, including the photos?
Have I? Oh, yes, indeed, yeah.
And they are true and correct?
Yes, they are.
And what I'm showing you is A4. That is actually a true and correct picture of the porch in this area?
Right, as it presently exists during the snow period.
Okay, and you're just extending that along the side.
Along that
as we
same
mentioned,
line,
not
yeah.
to be any closer than the existing porch.
Right.
And this porch is part of the original structure of the house?
Yes,
And it goes back to the 1890s?
as far as we know. When we bought the house, we were told the 1890s. 1880s, 1890s.
I have nothing else the board would have any other questions.
Anything, gentlemen? By the way, I should let everyone know that we're missing Peter and Brad tonight, one for business reasons, one for medical reasons, so Mr. Riley will be a voting member tonight. We have 4 instead of 5. That's what we have. Any questions, gentlemen? Anybody?
You move your exhibits as
Yes,
part of the record?
request the exhibits made part of the record, please.
Okay, and you would testify that this porch and house predate zoning in Radnor?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know when zoning in Radnor was, but...
1928, did it predate 1928?
Okay.
Did it predate 1928?
Yes, it predated 1928.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
It's the carriage house to a...
if there's no discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion that we grant the relief as requested, as the requested project does not increase the existing nonconformity of the building.
I'm not so sure we need relief, but I think basically they're entitled to this as a matter of right under the code.
Yeah, this board has
Yeah,
repeatedly said that you don't need to be here with a case like this.
it's clearly a non-conforming structure, and you're not increasing the non-conformity or over-expanding it or doing anything that's contrary to public health, safety, and welfare. So actually,
So perhaps council might enlighten the newer members of the board as to the motions that are more commonly made in this circumstance.
The old rule was section 101B1, you had to get a special exception to extend a nonconformity to, build on an addition to the extent, of the existing nonconformity. If you look at 101B1, it doesn't say you need a special exception. It just simply says it can be expanded. So
is there a motion required from the board?
I think that we should just simply, now that they're here, recognize, as this board has done 2 or 3 times when it jettisoned, the special exception piece of it, and just said, look, on that language, they're entitled to it.
Well, they've made an application, we should approve it.
Yeah, we should approve it, but on the grounds that they didn't
they're
need to
entitled.
be here. They're entitled to it.
Right.
Okay, I'll withdraw the prior motion.
I think their application asked for relief in the alternative, and the first contention was that the addition's permitted by right pursuant to 280-101B. So I think what we're basically saying is we agree.
I'll withdraw the prior motion and replace it with a motion that we confirm that the proposed addition is permitted.
Yeah. You're not, Counselor, you're not violating any other,
No.
Everything else is in conformity with the zoning requirements on this
If you
property.
looked at the lot, yeah, we're clearly.
Yeah, I think that your
conforming
plan
with
indicates
impervious
that,
coverage
too.
and building coverage and everything else. It's just
So-
that happens, it was a carriage house right on the street when it was built.
Okay, is there a second? to
I'll
the
second
motion?
that motion.
Okay, now, any discussion of the motion? Yeah, I would just like to say that I think we ought to make it clear that we're extending this relief and agreeing with their claim to do this as of right based upon the specific provisions of the plan that you filed with your application. That's what we're agreeing to. If you change that, you don't have our approval unless you come back here, okay? Subject to that modification, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next, we're calling Appeal Number 2912. The applicant, Nick and Melise Lucchese, property located at 121 Hillside Circle and zoned R3, seeks relief from the following section of the zoning code, 28025E, relating to rear yard setback.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Springer. I'm the engineer with Nick and Melise Lucchese. And we would like to present this to ask for permission to have the rear yard setback relief so that they can put on an addition off the back of the home, which would be a family room and a kitchen. The house has had no renovations done to it since it was constructed in the 50s. And Melise grew up in the home and has then since purchased the home with her family of 4 children, and a mother-in-law is living with them or will be eventually living with them. The home is located on Hillside Circle, and it is in Villanova. And if you look at, I'll put a kind of a locator map.
Yeah, I think you should swear in your.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for that, but I didn't see it happen, so.
Actually, Jill, will they be testifying?
Yes,
Okay, if everyone would just raise the right hand, I'll swear. When you do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth.
yes.
Okay, why don't you sign your names? Yes, Maurice Lucchese.
Nick Lucchese.
And
Liz.
Elizabeth Springer. All right, so if you look at the map here, I don't know if Jim can zoom in on this. This is their location on Hillside Circle. They are located here at number 154, and this is Lancaster Avenue out here, and it is a cul-de-sac that has single-family homes within that area, some of which the properties are not developed yet, and there's one under construction currently that having 2 homes built in a property across, kind of diagonal to them right now. We are asking for an addition to be, can I use this here? Can you hear me okay? Okay. We're asking to be able to build a addition off the back of the home where their existing kitchen and family room can move out into this area a little bit to accommodate the fact that there's 7 people living in the home in an original structure that has not had any additions made to it since it was constructed, any renovations. There is an existing patio there with some walkways. You can see that the house does not sit square on the property, that this front left corner of the home sits closer to the front, but then it kicks back to the right here. And as it kicks, it rotates so that by the time you get to the back right corner of the home, it's already near the setback line. And that presents a very difficult situation on trying to make any modifications because the house isn't square. And the other houses on the street have additions on the back. I took some photographs of ones that have it there, and they've been able to go out the rear of the house. But by the way this sits and the fact it's been pushed back from the street line, it doesn't give them the ability to go out without coming into the setback as a problem. So you can see the rear setback. It's supposed to be 35 feet off of the rear property line. And you can see that setback goes across the back and comes even almost through, it comes through a chimney. That's an existing patio and chimney there, outdoor chimney, living space, and then just misses the rear corner of the home. So in order to be able to put an area off there, we're violating this triangular portion of the setback. And so when you measure it from the property line, this corner of the addition is 27 feet off of the property line. And that's what we'd like to be able to push this building back to, this addition. It's a 1-story addition. I can show you some plans.
It might be a good idea I noticed that we haven't labeled exhibits, and might be a good idea to do that right now if we could.
Sure.
Could we, is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
It's fine if they intend to submit them as exhibits, yeah.
Well, we have submitted all of this for our zoning application, but I can resubmit again tonight if
Oh,
you'd
no,
like
no,
me to.
no, we have to identify them. That way,
Sure.
that when we
So this will be Exhibit A, which is a site plan.
Actually, I was going to suggest
Oh.
the application be Exhibit A. Or A1, actually. We usually use, A for applicants. So that will be A1.
Okay.
This plan here that you have, that you prepared, which shows the proposed addition, I would suggest that be A2.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you intend to exhibit the tax parcel map that you showed us first?
Anything you want us to put into the record, we should just
Sure,
label.
we can label that A3 then? Is that all right?
That's fine.
A3.
Okay.
And then I also have submitted with the plans that you should have there. You'll have pictures as well, but I did submit a copy of the plans I'm going to show. If you'd like me to mark them as an exhibit number, I can do that as well.
As long as we have a labeled copy in the township records, you don't need to label the ones that you're keeping for yourself, but we need to have a set for in the township file. I can
I don't think this-
take theirs during a break or something and conform them afterwards. I was going to suggest, by the way, that A3 be the tax parcel map.
Mm-hmm.
You then have a deed attached to my copy of
Yes.
the tax parcel map.
That's
I was going
correct,
to
it does.
suggest that would be A4.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this plan here, which is the
These are-
elevations.
Right, these are the architectural plans to give you an idea of what we're adding on, how we're using the space, what the existing space was like, so that you could see some pictures. It's a split-level home, stone and wood framed, and we'd be doing a wood framed addition off the back, 1 story.
Okay,
And
why don't we make that A5?
sure.
Okay. Again, just to keep the record straight.
Sure.
Okay, you then have a package of photographs,
Yes.
and I was going to suggest that we make those A6 and then A6A for page 1.
They're already labeled. They're already labeled with
They're all
numbers.
labeled in
So
there
I'm
for
just
you.
call it A61. They already have 2, 3,
Yes,
4.
okay, just A6. Okay, that's
We
fine.
can call it
I labeled
.1
all
and
those
.2
already.
and-
All right, that's fine. And then you have several, it looks like 3 letters of support.
Yes, we have some additional ones that came after I
Are there
submitted the
3?
package as
I only
well.
have 2 in my pack that I can
We have
find.
1, 2,
Yeah, I've got 3 of them.
3, 4. We had one more additional come in, so since you had, which I believe is this one, right?
Somewhere along the line, I'm missing one.
Yes.
Yep, there's
Okay.
4, and I can submit all of them for the record, too, and we have neighbors here to speak as well.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we take, just going in no particular order, the letter from the Chowdhuries, make that,
Sure, that's this one. and
okay,
you'll-
that's A7A, or A7, yeah, A7,
Okay.
paren little a, okay.
Oh, here we go. I found that one.
Then we have one from the Harmons.
Mhm.
Let's make that A7B. Then from, having a little trouble with my, Jane Giovannis, make that A7C. Do you have another letter? Maybe we could
I
put that
do.
up at this time?
This one came in, and the homeowners are here to speak as well. It is from Charles and Martha Berniker,
Okay.
and I
Okay.
do not, but I can make copies for you.
Okay, well,
I have
know-
one extra
I know the
copy.
Bernikers are here.
Yes, they're here. I have one copy that I can give you for your records.
That'd be fun. Okay. No, I'll label this, and you can... There you go. Good, sir. Okay, so these are all the exhibits that we know about at this point, that either came with the application or that you've just submitted right now?
Yes. I have additional pictures from more recently when there's not snow on my iPad that I can always bring up, but I
Okay.
figured we'd start with this.
Well, let's start, it's, again, this is just to simply organize the record, that's all.
Sounds good. So if you're looking at Exhibit A5, this is the existing front elevation, and we'll turn to the existing rear elevation of the house, which is here. And we have pictures in A6, A6-1 through, especially if you look at A6-2. So this is the rear of the home, and you can see that it's not much change from the split-level home, and they would like to be able to put a single-story addition off the back. They're also proposing some other renovations that do not have any issues that require any special approvals, and they're just renovating within the home and within the footprint of the home. But the first floor plan, if we just go back to exhibit...
Excuse me, quick
Yes.
question there. Just to give us perspective, would that picture have been taken from the edge of the property or from the right-of-way?
It's taken from about the property line.
Okay, thank you.
So if you go back to Exhibit A5, which is the plans that show the work that is proposed, and you look at drawing A4, that shows what they're planning on doing on the inside, which is a kitchen addition with a little family room area. So they're basically taking their small, 10 by 12 kitchen and being able to make it for a family of 6 and plus an in-law, so 7. And if you want to look at a rear elevation, you can look at drawing A6. And that shows the one-story addition off the back. They have had an overwhelmingly good amount of support for this project. We've had 4 letters stating that the neighbors are in support of this for lots of reasons. Primarily, it really does a lot for the neighborhood. The homeowner wants to stay. The neighbors want the homeowners to stay. They want them to be able to renovate this home so that their family can continue to live in it as they have grown. And they have young children right now, so it's not anybody moving out of the house anytime soon. And their neighbors like the fact that it helps with their property values, that it's a update to an older home in the neighborhood, and it's just a disadvantage that the house doesn't sit square within the setback line, which prevents them from being able to renovate without, or put an addition on without violating a setback.
How close is this to scale? It
It's
doesn't-
quarter-inch scale.
Like, look at the tilt of the roof, it's nothing like the picture. It just seems,
If I can show you a side elevation. Oh, thank you. I'll just turn one page. If you look at drawing A7, so this is the side elevation of the addition that's going on. It's a small roof with, it's a metal
that's
standing
more
seam
helpful,
roof.
yeah.
It's easier to see the pitch at that point. It's not a steep pitch, that's why we're using a metal roof. It will allow windows to come out the back of the house as well.
The only relief you need is for the rear yard setback.
That's
Everything
correct.
else, as shown on your plan, does conform to.
Yes, that's correct. And we're not even needing to do any stormwater management or anything like that. We're under 499 square feet of additional space. It's like 331, something like that, building area. It's not that much.
It looks like you've got water under the keel for the other requirements, but normally we only grant relief for what is asked for, and you specifically exclude anything else in the zoning code
Right, so we're just asking
for
for
the rear yard.
rear yard setback, that's correct. We're asking to be able to go from 35 feet to 27 feet at that corner.
Not as to anybody who's here and who may testify, but if there are any letters you have where the folks are not here, can you orient us as to where those homes are in
Sure.
relation to this
Can you guys-
particular
you wanna speak on that?
A3?
You want to bring that map back down?
Best way to do that's probably with Exhibit A3, yeah. Yeah.
And again, we probably will hear from people who are here, so just
So you want
as
me to-
anybody who's not here.
So the Chaudhrys would be here, which is
Lot
Okay,
number.
immediately next.
A7A.
Oh, wait, Chaudhry is if we're using that map, what's the lot, they will have lot numbers.
I think it says excuse me.
It says 157.
Okay, 157?
157 is the Chaudhrys, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
And A7B, so Harmon's, is that right there now? I think that's 156, right?
Oh, Joanna?
Yeah.
No, they're across the street.
Oh, I'm sorry. Richard, yeah. They're 155? I cannot read this, sorry.
Across the street.
Yeah, 155. And A7C is Jane and Giovannis, is, looks like 156, I believe. And the Bernicker's A7D would be lot 151. And then the one next, this is a rental, which we don't know who they are. And where's the other rental right here?
What is that shaded strip? Is that part of the right-of-way for the little strip between 157 and that kind of trapezoidal?
Right here?
Yeah, what is that strip?
I'm not really sure, actually.
Looks like it
It
might not be a
an
tax
access from the
parcel.
old P&W,
Yeah, it
maybe.
may not be an access parcel. And what's the piece next to it, the odd-shaped piece before 156? That doesn't have a lot number either.
This right here?
Yes.
Okay, so Jane, this is attached to Jane's property.
Okay.
That's what that is, yeah. But I think this is the right-of-way, that used to be the right-of-way to the P&W, but
Yeah. And your lot is 158?
No,
we are 154.
154.
Oh, there's a star, sorry.
It has the star on it.
I see it.
What about 159?
These are empty lots, it's just grassy areas.
Oh,
Thank you.
These two are obviously the lots that are being built, so.
Now, what is the brief statement of the hardship that is the basis for the variance?
The hardship is that the way that the home has been situated on the lot does not allow for expansion of the home.
Is there any questions? Is anyone here from the audience on this application? Would you like to come up and be sworn and testify?
Hi,
If you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And
yes,
state your names for the record.
Marty Berniker.
And Chuck Berniker.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Marty and Chuck Berniker.
Thank you. And spell your vertical.
B-E-R-N-I-C-K-E-R. Thanks for letting us take a few minutes. So we've been residents on the street for 16 years. We live down the other end. And a couple comments I would have is the history of the street. Excuse me. It was originally owned by PennDOT. Most of these homes, the grasslands that are still there, were the remaining lots that have never been developed, have been sold recently, but they're not developed. Behind the property is a long right-of-way. And I guess from our perspective where we live, if you look at the very top of the street, we have the same issue where we needed to get relief for pretty much the identical situation, I guess, 12 years ago. And the board was kind enough to grant that to us. Again, the person we were obstructing behind us was the right-of-way. And I don't think anybody really cared, frankly, about disturbing the ultimate neighbor was the right-of-way. So with that in mind, and the fact that we got the same relief, it's just, we would hope they would be able to do it, stay on the street. It's a great neighborhood, and it's just getting better every day. 2 new homes are being built right now. And, I think just the fact that it's, we've been living with the abandoned railroad for 20 years, it'll at least give us a little advantage, excuse me, for having that behind us. That's the way I would look at it. So thanks for listening.
Ditto, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else here for this application? You have anything else to present to us?
No, not this time.
Okay.
And you move your exhibits, and you'd wish your exhibits to be made part of the record?
Yes, please.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the variance to the rear setback requirements for this application.
Second to the motion.
Second.
Once again, I just would qualify that and say we would restrict this approval to the precise location and improvements shown on the plans and the other documents submitted with the application and made exhibits to this matter.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No?
Thank you
You're
very much.
approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you want, mine are all labeled too, if you need any. Yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that. No, part of it. Oh, there's another copy?
No, that's the only one.
No, but I thought you were,
Oh, you want me to put this in?
yeah, that's the township. I always keep my own little file for at least a while after the hearings.
We're going to take a couple minutes here just to get our files in order on the last 2 cases. Okay, we're going to recess for just a couple minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, next and last item on the agenda is, there'll be a bit of reading here. Appeal number 2911, this is continued from January 16th, 2014. The applicant, Radnor Chester Road Investment LP and 252 RCR Investments LP, property located at 240 to 252 Radnor Chester Road. Site is split zoned PB, which is planned business, and R1. Applicant seeks variance from 280-60B relating to building area. Applicant seeks a special exception under 280-101.A1, or contends that it is permitted by right or as a decrease in existing nonconformity from the following sections. Number 1, 280-14 regarding parking in the R1 zoning district. 2, 280-15E or 280-17C regarding rear yard setback for the parking structure. 3, 280-16 regarding the height of the parking structure within the R1 zoning district. 4, 280-60B, not increasing the existing nonconformity relating to impervious coverage. 5, 280-60C, not increasing the existing nonconformity relating to location of parking. 6, 286D, regarding buffer strip. And 7, 284, that's 280-4, regarding size of parking spaces and parking structure. In addition, applicant seeks any other zoning or alternative relief required pursuant to the plans presented with this application. Mr. Caniglia, I have a question for you before you start.
Go ahead.
With this revised, this amended application, a plan has been filed, which is labeled zoning application plan.
Correct.
Now, there was a plan included with the original application, also called zoning application plan. Now, that plan had been colored in with some information. This one doesn't have the color, and it says under revised revisions, it says a 3/2014 revision per layout revision, so it doesn't really explain it. In what way are the two different?
Yeah, I can go through that. That was part
Okay.
of the presentation that
It
I
would
can
help
show you.
to-
Basically, there was a matter of fact, so you have, I just want to make certain we have the exhibits right. So everyone has A15, because I know I filed several A15s with the amended application. And
Well,
so
I
just wanna
have,
make certain-
the old one from
Does
the
everyone
last
have the
time
newer one?
was an A10. This was A10. And this
Correct.
The new one is labeled A12.
And actually, it should be A15. That is
Should be.
my mistake, because I was looking, and there's actually a duplicate A4 and A14's the same, but that's okay. This should be A15. I believe I marked it A12 when I filed it, and that was just because I had miscounted the number of exhibits. So that plan that you just referred to, Noah, is A15.
What are the differences? just
Okay,
so we can-
and if I can, too, I have additional exhibits from A16 to A29 that I'll hand up to the board, but then I can wait and tell you what the differences are, or I'll just hand up the additional
Okay,
exhibits.
as long as we're going to, at some point,
Yeah.
understand what we're looking at, so.
Sure.
Because we reviewed things before, and we want to know what's changed, what
Exactly.
hasn't changed.
And actually, A16, which is part of the new exhibits I'm handing up, explains what the differences are. If you want. This one will be the one for the file.
Oh, that'll be one for me.
Yeah, one for you.
Well, I guess, are these all labeled?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, these can go into the township file. I mean, I guess you get a set too. Mr. Cornelia, the operative plan from last time was A7,
No, it was A10.
A10 from last.
I have a colored one here, that's
Yeah.
A10.
And actually, you have A15, and actually you do have a colored one of A15, that is A27, that we can show you too. But and the only difference between A15 and A27 is A27 is colored. So it's a little bit easier to.
A10 is to be superseded?
A10 superseded.
Okay.
And the differences are, if you notice, I've said in A16, and I'll just quickly go through the differences. Perhaps if we show them, this is, yeah. Here's A10.
Well, give me a chance to catch up with the file here.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. I'll wait for you.
My vice chairman usually keeps the permanent file up to date, and he's not here tonight, so I'm doing double duty. Okay. They were newer.
I was looking to see if we can compare. The A10, what you're looking at here is A10, and this is the old plan that has been superseded. And if you look at A16, what we've done here is this parking structure has been pushed back. You'll note, if you recall correctly, you have, this is zone PB, it's a split zoning district, PB here, R1 over here. This is PLO here, and then as you know, as we mentioned before, this area here is R1. So this area in here is R1 with PLO here. The original plan, A10, that we had proposed had a parking structure that extended down toward the R1 area, and it also had the proposed building closer to that R1 property line and actually in the R1 zoning district. Also, this proposed building had an average height of 45 feet and at some point was 50 feet high. What we've done is we revised it, and this is the colored version, which is actually A27, but it's the same as A15. And what we've done, you'll notice, is we've pushed the parking, we've basically taken the this actually shows it too, if you can see. Here's the old parking structure. We've pushed it back toward the property line in common with Radnor Financial, so we've taken it out of this area. We've connected the two buildings so to further push it away from the residential area, and actually we lowered the building also so that we're not requesting any variance on height. This building, this proposed addition here actually complies with the height requirement. So what we've done...
This is A29, I'm just...
this is what you're looking at is a colored version. This A27
A27 is the color version.
is a color version of A15.
I need to grow another hand.
Yeah, okay. But this is A15, just a colored version, which is easier to see. And as I mentioned, we reduced the height, so we don't need any relief on height. The new building, the new proposed building's entirely in the PB zone. None of it's in the residential zone, and there is no buildings in the residential zone. You may recall there was a little township-owned piece right here, and originally this building needed relief because it was too close to this little township-owned 50 by 50 parcel. We've actually now moved it so that, again, we don't need relief as far as building placement from that side property line. We've enhanced the buffer along, and we have a better picture of that, along the residential property line. And actually, speaking to Mr. Gross today, he's actually willing to kind of extend that all the way up so that it would be the whole property, but we'll get to that later in one of the other exhibits. And actually, what he's proposing is trees 20 to 25 feet high at planting, not at maximum peak height, but at planting 20 to 25 feet high. As we mentioned, the parking structure has been modified so that it is no longer in this area. It is pushed back to the property line with the commercial, the common property line with the commercial Radnor Financial Center. There was a delivery drive in here in the residential area that's also been removed so that it is now in the PB area. And basically this garage area, there was some concern about being able to see light and things in the garage, and so we kind of closed this portion of the garage so that no light can emanate through it. So that's really the differences in the two plans between what you saw, I guess, was in January now, and what you're seeing this evening.
Mr. Cornelia, quick question. Last time on this, you presented correspondence from the Township solicitor regarding the Planning Commission's consideration of the prior plan.
Correct.
Do you envision either going back to planning with the new plan, or is much of what is in here responsive to some of the issues that planning had raised?
It's responsive, and also, if this was approved by the board, we'd have to go back to land development anyway. So it'd have to go back to planning, if it was eventually approved and the plan moved forward. All right. So I'll move on. I think we've already described, and actually, let me ask, has he?
Well, I'll swear him again, it's been so long. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
And state your full name for the record.
Sheldon Gross.
Shelley, you heard me describe the old plan as well as the new plan and the differences between the two. What I've described so far, is that true and correct?
Yes.
And that would be your testimony if you were called to testify on the matter?
Yes.
All right. Now, let's move on somewhat with what we have here. I'm going to show you A17. But first, if there's anything else that you wanted to add on this new proposed plan and other differences between what we talked about in January and what we're talking about here in April, I guess.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the community for their input and dialogue. We've had several forums where we've had some discussions. We had a town hall meeting on March 30th, which was attended by several community members and neighbors and Commissioner Booker. And we vetted several of their comments, and the byproduct of what they've shared with us, for the most part, is what we've done today, although I'm sure they can speak for themselves. And where we are today is actually the existing parking lot, which goes to the property line.
And if you can, when you refer to plans, if you can refer to it, so this one, you're referring to A8.
A8. The existing parking lot slopes from a level of 100 to a level of 112 at the most eastern part of the parking lot. Our original plan, which Nick referred to, had us building a building at the 112 side at 38 feet and at the 100 side at 50 feet, so that the average height was actually from the slope was approximately 45 feet. As a byproduct of community dialogue, what we've done is we intend to excavate the existing parking lot, which is here, to a level of 104, so that the building will actually sit at 104. The closest home, the existing dwelling, which is at 14 Radnor Way, is at an elevation of 120. So in essence, at 104 versus 120, will be 16 feet below the first levels. The ground levels will be 16 feet below the elevation of the existing residence at 14 Radnor Way.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you give us an estimate of the distance there from that
can
residence you pointed to the edge of your new construction?
Yes, the residence is, the residential section, I believe, is 100 and, is it one? I guess I could turn to Alex just to clarify that, but I think it's 144 feet from,
It looks like, and actually it's marked on the plan from the...
yes, 239 feet to the edge of the building, and 144 feet to the property line.
Thank you.
So it's 144 feet from here to the property line, and from the residence, it's 239 feet. So in essence, when we place the building at 104, the east side of the property...
When you say 104, make sure you say elevation.
Elevation, I apologize. The elevation of 104. When we placed the building at...
We talking about the office building or the garage?
Everything is actually at 104.
Everything.
Yes. So when we place the elevation at 104, we will be excavating on the east side of the property to a level of 104, which means that we're going to be putting in an 8-foot retaining wall approximately on the east side of the property, so that the traffic that flows to the garage will be actually running 8 feet below the 112 elevation, which is the maximum elevation on the east side of that property, which is still 8 feet below, or a total of 16 feet below the elevation of the closest residence, which is at 14 Radnor Way. The truck loading, which was previously closer to the neighborhood, is actually, the Radnor neighbors, has actually been moved to an area that's as far away from the property as the residential property, and has actually been pushed back into the PLO section. So the adjacent PLO area is here. This is the closest residence here, and the loading and the truck loading in the area and according to compliance with the code, has been moved into the PB section and as far away from as possible from the residence. And again, it's adjacent to the PLO area.
Okay. Going to what I believe is marked as A17. Now, this is the plan from Mayfield Gardens. If you can describe what this plan represents, Shelley.
One of the comments we received from a few of the residents, the adjoining residents, was that they didn't want to see the property from their homes. So we went back to our landscaper, Mayfield Gardens, and we asked them to provide us with a rendering that would actually, or will allow us to build or install, I think they're calling out 37 Norway spruces, which will be between 20 and 25 feet in height. So when this is the initial planning height. So when we place the spruces in this area here, they'll be at an elevation of approximately 110. We'll be adding 25 feet to that elevation, so it'll be at 135 feet initial installation, which will then, we believe, shield the residences from the view, their western view of the commercial area for not only our property, but all of the commercial area from our property west to Lancaster Avenue.
Are those trees going on the office building side of the retaining wall or the residence side?
They're all on the office side. They're on our property,
Okay.
property line. As you can see, the property line is right here, and the trees are being installed on the west side of the
And
property.
the wall's at the property line, is that where it is?
Well, the wall will be inside the trees. So the wall is planned to go
Oh,
into this.
so they're at the higher elevation, they're
They'll
at
be
the
at
top
the
of
high,
the wall?
they'll be on top of the
That's-
high.
Yeah,
Yes, that's a very good question. They'll be at the highest elevation of the property. Now, there are existing trees there, but these are trees that'll be green 24/7, 365 days a year. And you'll notice one of the other questions, or one of the other issues that was raised, is that one of the neighbors wanted to prevent a traffic pattern from developing. Once we remove this building, they wanted to prevent a traffic pattern from coming through Radnor Chester Road, because if you notice on this rendering, this is all green and it's going to be all open now. So one of the neighbors raised an issue that they were concerned that there'd be traffic flow or walking, pedestrian traffic that would walk from here down Radnor Way to the train station. So if you'll notice the staggering of the trees, they're going to be overlapping each other, creating a density that would, it's not a wall, but it's the best we can do without putting up a big fence, which would probably not be there.
Where's the wall run, from where to where?
The wall's going to be running, the elevation would start approximately here and run along this area to here. Keeping in mind, Mr. Cutler, that we're at a point right now where we're before you with the concept and the renderings. We have to come back after this step and come in with a design and fully engineered process to accommodate the Planning Commission and Land Development That's when the wall will be fully designed and the location fully placed.
I was asking that question just because I was interested in the fact that that's also an impediment to people walking across to the station.
It should be in this, from this area here, it will be. Our first thought was, frankly, we wanted to create a big open green space in the front of the property. But the feedback that we had gotten from some of the neighbors led us to believe that we were actually better off putting these spruce trees in, which, as you probably, if you've done landscaping, you know that these spruce trees are not going to be an inexpensive part of the process. The fact that they're 25 to 30, or 20 to 25 feet in height alone at planning will add to the enhancement of what the neighbors will see, and will actually enhance the entire neighborhood.
Michelle, let's back up a minute, too, because you remember last time in January, we talked about the possibility of putting a second floor on this property here. Can you describe why that is not feasible to put a second floor on it? You could add as much office space by putting a second floor, probably not even being here, but why was that not feasible?
Well, let me elaborate on this. The footprint of the existing building is 66,000 square feet approximately. If we added 3 stories to it, it would take us up to 190, rapid computation, around 198,000 square feet. We could actually add a 1-story section here and a 2-story section in this area. So in essence, we'd be at 198,000 square feet. We have an existing tenant relationship. It's an administrative headquarters for Mainline Health currently. And as such, their lease could conceivably run to 2030 or 2035. We are not in a position to be able to add additional space onto here. So in essence, what we're doing, our proposal is that we're putting 70,000 square feet on the property. By putting 70,000 square feet on the property, it's an actual reduction of about 26% of what we can put on the property versus what exists on the property today. So by building, we're going to build 170,500 square feet in total in lieu of just considering 240 Radnor Chester Road, 198,000 square feet.
And the reason you can't, you testified last time, the reason you can't build that now is because of the existing tenant, which goes until 2030, I believe?
Yes, they have options to through 2030 or 2035, yes.
Okay.
So we're willing to agree that the property will be built at 170,000, I think it's under 171,000 square feet. By doing this, we're foregoing the additional 28,000 square feet that would be built if we wanted to build 2 more stories onto this building. And if we take this property and add it to the 252 Radnor Chester Road property, we actually can build 215,000 square feet. And if we build 215,000 square feet, again, we're willing to, by stipulation, be able to agree that we'll limit the property to the under 171,000 square feet.
That's for
You're
all
willing to
times?
make a condition.
Pardon me? Yes.
For all times? Even
For
when
it'll perpetuate with me.
Even when no.
I mean, yes.
Even when the Mainline Health lease is over, if they don't exercise their options, or if they do,
we'll
the
build
property will
171.
never have more than that square footage on it.
I'm willing to stipulate to that.
If we can figure out a lawful way to do that, okay, it's good to know.
Well, I'm offering that to the community because the process, and when we get further in this, I think that the concept that we were trying to create is a win-win situation, and I think as we get further along in this, I think we'll recognize that it's a win it's obviously, I admit it, it's a win for us. So that's the first part. I do believe it's a win for our Radnor Way residents and neighbors because I think that we're enhancing their view. 2 of the homes, one home was purchased in 2012 and another home was purchased in 2013. When they purchased these homes, everything existed today. What we're trying to do is not only create a better view, but we're also trying to enhance what they will be seeing on a daily basis. And I think that if you look at it from the township's point of view, we're obviously creating more ratables, and we're also creating a larger tax base for a revenue stream for the township. So that's where we see it as a win-win-win.
Can I ask you about the height, just so I'm clear? The height of the proposed office is within the 35-foot limitation?
35 or 38?
It's
I think
it's 38 feet, I think, is by code. It's limited to 38 feet, but the view from
Is
the,
that an R1 or is
no,
it?
PB,
PB, so it's 38 feet.
38
PB.
feet, yes.
And the addition is going to be within that 38 feet?
It's all going to be under 38 feet,
And the
yes.
existing building's at 26 feet?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, so this building's
Going to be
taller
higher,
than the other.
yes.
Yeah.
But the view, it's important to realize that although it's going to be at 38 feet, the perspective from the community is 16 feet less than that.
So you will not need height variance
We
relief.
do not need a height variance, no.
And as far as the size of the new proposal, it says 68,850 square feet?
Yes.
And the previous building was, I think, 70,000 square.
Correct.
So
What we did was, in order to fit this within this window, because the important thing to us was the feedback that we got from the community and also from Mr. Cutler during our last presentation was we were putting a commercial building in R1. The community said the R1 buffer was there for a reason. They were asking for us to maintain the R1 buffer. What we're offering is a variation that puts us all in the PB area.
All right, so
takes
none
us
of it's
to-
in the R1 then?
None of this is in the R1, that's correct.
And I did notice, under the original plan, the impervious coverage was 63.1%.
63.1 is the current impervious calculation
Yeah.
for,
So the new plan is the exact same?
no. The new plan, we haven't finalized the exact amount, but the current number is somewhere between 60 and 62%, so we've actually reduced the impervious.
It will be less than
The
the
63.
existing.
It will be less than the...
Yes, yes. Keeping in mind, you'll know.
Okay. Hard to tell just from looking at the picture, but...
No, I understand. Keeping in mind, and when we get a little further along, I'll show you that some of the pictures will make it much clearer, but our current ingress and egress from the property actually is in this area today.
Yep.
And what we're doing is we're closing this off, this ingress, and we're closing off the current ingress and egress for 252.
And you're taking down a structure, a building.
And we're taking down the structure. So that it creates this green area, and then what we've done is we've pushed all of the traffic as far as possible away from the residential community, and we're actually aligning the traffic to a traffic signal that's going in at Radar Road. The township and the school district are putting in a traffic signal at Radar Road, and our exit and ingress will be coordinated with that traffic signalization. And I don't know where it stands in the process right now, but the school district is also going to widen Radnor Chester Road in this area on their side, thereby creating a left-hand turn access into Radar Road from Radnor Chester Road, and creating a left-hand turn ingress into Radnor Chester, 240 Radnor Chester Road, and creating a bypass lane. So what we're, in essence, happening is that we've taken all of the traffic, pushed it away from the residential community, and also, in addition to pushing it away from the residential community, the traffic will be metered now, going onto Radnor Chester Road. And if you'll notice, the right-hand turn is actually beyond the traffic signalization. So in essence, and this has to be approved by PennDOT, but in essence, what we've done is we've eliminated the load on the traffic signal, and we've now made it a right-hand turn at any time coming out of our property at 240 Radnor Chester Road.
I have a few questions. I don't know if you or Nick would be the ones to answer, and they're on a couple of topics. The original rear garage was only in the PB portion, correct?
No. The ramp actually is in the R1.
The ramp, but the actual structure, other than the ramp, the parking spaces are all in the PB.
I don't.
no.
Here, John.
A8 is the.
Yeah, A8, yeah.
There's 22 spaces on the ramp that actually sit in the R1 area, and the entire R1 area to the east side of the PB line is all parking. This is
But
all
it's part of the
parking.
structure.
The structure actually comes to right here, to the property line right now. And the ramp actually comes this way.
How
And
about the decking? Where does
The decking begins right here.
Okay, so there's parking there, but the decking doesn't, the raised part of the
The
structure.
raised parking structure is here.
In the PB. And you're
Yes, this is in the PB here.
Yeah, and
The
you're
R1
proposing
here,
to extend the decking into the R1.
the decking is actually coming into the R1 at 35 feet.
Okay.
And the existing structure, and you'll see it from one of the pictures that we'll present to you, it's in one of the exhibits, you'll see it, it's actually running into the R1 here. And that was approved, that's an existing non-conformity that was approved in 2008 or 2009, I think.
Well, it's not, if it's it was a zoning board approval, it's not non-conforming. It is,
I apologize,
I mean, that's, to take advantage of the special exception, it's got to be non-conforming.
yeah, it was my mistake, I mischaracterized it.
Okay, if I remember correctly, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be, your theory is that, as to why the parking structure can be up against the rear property line is that it's a structure and not a building?
I believe that, and I have to look, I know it's introduced as an exhibit, and I believe previously, I'm looking at for the prior zoning relief for that structure, John. Yeah, it doesn't say. I recall when we made presentation here, we were arguing as existing nonconformity since we had parking already all the way back to that property line already. Now, of course, the opinion, since we don't, if it's by consent or without objection, we
It's an
now
order.
don't specify.
We didn't
what the relief is.
specify the opinion.
Right.
The order, rather, there was no opinion in that case.
Correct, there was no opinion.
Okay. I guess I'm having some difficulty as to why the rear yard setback for the district wouldn't apply, especially to the part in R1, and we are now extending the decking into R1. How do we do that without variance relief?
Well, to some extent, the decking's already there, as was testified to. This is the existing, here's the existing R1, and here's the existing parking
But you're still
ramp.
extending
But
it.
you're making it higher, there's no question. You're making it higher.
and you're
You're
extending
expanding it.
something. Yeah.
There's going to be more parking spaces in that R1 area than what currently exists.
And it was done by zoning board approval, so there's no nonconformance protection. It's a creature of the approval
Yeah.
that was granted.
Although, again, as I mentioned, I believe that, the argument at that last hearing that we were involved in was that it was an extension of the existing nonconformity regarding the parking.
Yeah, that's, I
Yeah,
would
the parking
expect you to
exists, and the
take,
parking exists today, even as you can see here in the R1. There is parking. There is not a significant parking structure like there would be under the proposed plan.
okay, that's, secondly, there's a reference in the ad to the buffer strip requirement. This is item 6 at 280-6.d. That can't be right. I assume.
You mean the section number?
Yeah, it can't be right. Where's the buffer? Now, that's the one in PLO. Yeah, 6 is a divided zoning district thing. So,
I have 61D down.
61D.
okay, the advertisement dropped the 1. I don't think it's relevant for publication, but it is, the 286D is totally
Yeah, I had,
different.
yeah, I had
Should be 61.
61D, but I did refer.
61D is the proper site.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that we just ought to, I'm comfortable with the advertising because they clearly disclose what they want to do, and it's just got a typo in there. The letter from the township solicitor granting, recommending approval is a little problematic to me because, first of all, the applicant undertake and provide to the township the appropriate traffic studies. Well, if we grant the approval, whatever traffic studies they are, there may be some under the saldo, but I don't see how we can unwind the approval if we don't like we have an issue with the traffic studies that come in after we've granted the approval. Stormwater is, that would be a land development issue. The proposed improvements, including the Raider Road traffic light, do we know that PennDOT's going to sign off on that?
There's an HOP that's been submitted to PennDOT from the school district. I believe there's one that's in the process of being submitted by the township, and that's for the traffic signalization.
But we do not know that the PennDOT will actually approve that.
I've actually met with PennDOT, with the township, with the Radnor Township folks, the administrative folks, and the engineers, and with the school district and their engineers, and they were very supportive of it.
They're supportive of it. We
Yeah.
still haven't,
Yeah,
unfortunately, got
but-
the
Let me
sign
ask
off.
you this, can we agree to condition it upon PennDOT approval?
We wouldn't do anything without PennDOT approval. We have to. And Mr. Ryan, just so you know, this is not our traffic signalization. So we are an active community participant in it, but this is a Radnor School District and Radnor Township joint application. We are going to be submitting a separate application once we have the approvals that we need to be able to relocate the ingress and egress.
There is authority that, including a brand-new case, Northampton Township versus Richboro Partners. And there's another case that basically say that, traffic improvements that may or may not be constructed can't really be taken as a you can't base a decision on something that is speculative. Now, I acknowledge that this is a situation where the township and the school district and everybody has to cooperate. I just point out to the board that we haven't got that guarantee yet.
Yeah, I remember, John, too, that's from the Planning Commission, and they're looking at it from a land development perspective.
I understand that. I understand that.
Does
Mr.
it meet
Ryan?
the warrants, do you know? Does it meet the PennDOT warrants for a light
Yes,
there?
yes. That's what, I wanted to elaborate on Mr. Ryan's other comment. The traffic study has been submitted to the township engineer. I think Amy has a copy of the traffic study, and I think that Mr. Norsini also has a copy of it. As far as we're concerned, we're doing this as an accommodation. We were perfectly content with our current ingress and egress, and we can go back to developing the plan with the existing ingress and egress to the facility. We're actually, there's some impervious negative calculations that come by us moving our current ingress and egress. But we were doing this to accommodate the township and the school district, and we put it in on this plan, not to say to you that we needed this change in our traffic flow. We don't. We could easily live with what we've got, even with the modification to the property.
I take it you've worked with the neighbors to design and install the appropriate buffering, as you've testified, that the applicant consider reducing the number of parking spaces. Did the A15 plan reduce them from?
No.
Okay. I mean,
Want
look,
to address that?
Well, and actually, it reduced all the surface parking spaces. It reduced it down from, I think we were at about 70 or 68, whatever it was on the previous plan. We've reduced it down to 34 surface parking spaces, and that's for handicap, ADA compliance, and visitor parking. So that's the garage is limited to the residents of the, or the lessees of the building.
Shelley, could you explain the parking situation with Mainline Health and why currently we have additional parking spaces and what your proposal is for this new addition, that actually the addition itself is under-parked even though the site fully complies with parking?
Currently, between, our site has 491 parking spaces on the property. The addition of the 70,000 square feet by code would require 272 additional spaces. We're actually only adding 253 additional spaces. So we're under-parking the new building, and we're going back to Mainline and ask them for some of their flex spaces back so we don't have to build additional parking spaces.
now the deed restriction is as to the existing building only, as I understand.
No, the deed restriction, we We're not sure how we're going to handle the 252 acquisition, but there's a thought that we may combine 252 into two.
Oh, we'd have to.
Yeah, we're going to combine two.
We're merging the two lots.
The two lots will be merged, so it will be, the deed restriction for the size at 171,000 or less would be for both properties.
Okay, and, okay, so it's both properties. Because this one says a deed restriction be placed on the property preventing the existing building from being increased in height. And you're saying that you would agree to the 170,000 as a cap?
170, under 171, because like I said, there's still
171.
some design things that we need to do for that atrium in the.
And it would be for the merged property.
For the merged property, yes.
240-252.
Would you be, Mr. Chairman, this deed restriction, particularly for a development that's still in some flux and is going to have to be approved by the township anyway through subdivision and land development, assuming this board wished to approve this, it seems to me that that task ought to be handed off to the township solicitor to craft that restriction, particularly if there's some, I mean, I'm not trying to put more work on Mr. Rice's desk particularly, but it seems to me that that will be where this is all hammered out. And we should probably have some general requirements, like no more than 171,000 square feet. or something.
I would suggest that it be subject to the township solicitor's approval. Probably the applicant would draft it, submit it to the township for their approval.
So, John, would you have any problem with our conditioning relief as a condition precedent that this be properly restricted of record?
Yeah, then to the sole satisfaction of the township and the township solicitor. I mean, if you wanted us to look at it, we could, I could look at it too on behalf of the board. I certainly think, though, that...
No, I was just concerned about the timing, because we're going to be acting before the township is going to take a lot of other actions involving review and approval of plans and things, and the restrictions. So if we're to give approval now or in the near future, we want to make sure that our approval is subject to things happening that are supposed to be happening.
Yes. I think you can, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, let's not put the cart before the horse. Maybe we want to hear the entire case, and then we can get into this nuance of the conversation might be a little bit more appropriate a bit down the road.
Yeah, I just want to make sure our solicitor doesn't have a problem with our issuing an order that would have a condition precedent like that in it. That's all.
I know on land development, it happens frequently. It's a common condition in land development.
I think we can do it. Again, we would not be giving an approval under anything except the specified provisions of the zoning code. We would expressly accept everything else, and we would expressly accept any other township ordinances, including the subdivision and land development ordinance. Our requirement would be an additional requirement to whatever rights the township has under those ordinances.
Yeah, but what I'm concerned about is if we say that we are granting relief and another township body later in the process decides that they don't mind if they build a little more space with some other conditions, that shouldn't be binding us in our decision. Our relief should be cut off, and we'd have to have a new presentation seeking new relief at that point.
I think that
Because
just the
the
limitation-
different bodies have different things to consider, and they may have different viewpoints. And if we're granting relief at this point, before those processes are done, we want to make sure that if it doesn't happen the way we think it's supposed to happen when we grant the relief, we're back to a new approval process here, regardless of what anyone else does. Just want to make sure that we can cover ourselves that
No,
way.
if we give a relief that says you can't have more than 171,000, and they want to come in with 171,500, they're outside the scope of that approval.
Should I continue? Okay.
I have no more questions at this time.
The buffer that we would be installing, to go back to your question, would be east of the wall, the retaining wall that we're going to be putting in. And like you said, it will be elevated by 8 feet. So therefore, the buffer would be 8 feet above the retaining wall.
Okay, going to the next exhibit, which is A18. Can you just tell the board what A18 represents?
This is the current view from Radnor Way to the western properties. As you can see, the prevalent view, although our building is here, it's also the prevalent view is the Brandywine properties that are west of ours.
So actually, looking at that, is your,
Our building,
building is obviously the Brandywine building,
yes,
correct?
yes,
And is your building,
right there.
is that white or is that snow?
That's the building, yes.
In earlier, when you were looking at a diagram, you pointed to a particular private residence and said that's the nearest. Does that show in this photo?
That's the house right here.
You're pointing to the right side.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this house right here is at 14 Radnor Way,
So the far right of A18?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, then showing A9,
This is the building at 252. This is the non-conforming building that sits within 18 feet of the curb line at 252. This is the building that's going to be torn down, the existing building. And this is Mr. and Mrs. Diamond's home right here at 254 Radnor Chester Road.
okay, going to A19, what that represents?
This is the installation of the spruce trees along the property borderline on, that joins our property.
This plan was prepared by Mayfield Gardens.
This was prepared by Mayfield, yes. This is what they've proposed to deliver to us.
A21,
A21 represents the view from 240 Radnor Chester Road.
that's the building,
This is our existing parking lot. This is the fence. This is the properties, this is 14 Radnor Way. This is 10 Radnor Way. And this property is further away from our property than 14 Radnor Way.
A21,
A21 represents the western side of the planting buffer that we're going to be installing on the property line.
now referring to A21, remember you mentioned the retaining wall and the
The retaining,
excavation?
this is the 112, this car is parked at 112. So this area here will contain the retaining wall. It's on the east side of, the west side of the buffer zone. And this whole area here will be excavated to 104.
A22,
A22 represents the Radnor Way view. That's the eastern elevation of the existing property. Now, take note that there are light standards in the parking lot. I believe there are 10 or 12 of them. Our proposal is that these light standards will disappear. We're going to be using low-profile lighting, which would be below the retaining wall and below the buffer. And we're using bollards and directed lighting towards our property and away from the residential sections. There'll be no spillover.
A23,
This is the proposed view from Radnor Way, the east elevation. You'll notice the garage and the building are at the same height. This is actually a little bit lower than that. I think it's at 35 feet, and this is at 38 feet.
going to A24.
The planted trees aren't in that picture?
No, you'll see it on the slope drawing, though.
Okay.
Actually, the trees,
Just to give us a look at the building, I see.
And keep in mind, Eric Olds is from D2CA, and he's responsible for drawing this, so he can speak more to it if you have any specific questions. But this is a conceptual drawing. If we're blessed with your approval tonight, the next steps would be Land Development and Planning Commission. We believe this is a dynamic process. We want to have the community actively involved in what we ultimately decide to present to and build on this site. So we believe it's going to be an open dialogue and forum, and we're going to invite them to continue to be part of the process as we did in the last 2 months.
A25,
825 represents the existing south view. This is the view from Radnor Chester Road. And as I said to you, you would get a better feel for the property. This is the existing ingress and egress for the property.
You skip 824?
It's at 25. I'm sorry, you're right, it's SA 24. Is that, yes, SA 24.
This is the existing ingress and egress off of Radnor Chester Road now. And if you look back at, if you envision the plot plan of the new building, we could conceivably still maintain the existing ingress and egress coming in this way and then turning if PennDOT didn't approve the change, which I strongly believe they will. But we don't necessarily have to move our current ingress and egress to accommodate our new design. But you will take note, this is the end of the ramp. It's actually R1, if you just want to draw a line.
It's off the camera.
I apologize. I'll move it over. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The end of the ramp is where Nick is pointing. The R1 line is approximately right here. So in essence, the ramp is sitting in R1, and this is the structure that's currently existing. This is what was approved previously.
Showing 825?
A25 is the proposed view from Radnor Chester Road. This would be the ingress and egress and the traffic flow. And this is at 104 here. This is at 100. This will have a slope that'll carry, a 4-foot slope that'll carry the traffic to the existing building.
And if you can explain 826, which is the site sections.
This gives you this will give you a better view of what we were discussing previously. This is the, okay, I apologize. This is our existing building. This is the atrium, the connection atrium. This is the proposed new building. This is the parking and the traffic. This is the slope to the property line. This is the tree planting buffer that we've discussed. And this is the existing residence. So the existing residence at 14 Radnor Way is at 120.12. The Evergreens planting buffer would be plus or minus 25 feet in height. And I guess you can see from this the view that the anticipated view that would be generated by the sight line. And as you can see, the building on Radnor Way is 239 feet from the proposed new building.
827, as we mentioned previously, just the color drawing that we've been looking at all along of A15. And then, as Shelley's mentioned, I know he's had several meetings with the neighbors, and they're present here this evening, and they can speak to, the project itself. And 828, I think, just is a synopsis of something.
Yes,
that you had
828
said
is
to neighbors.
this is a memo that was shared with our community neighbors, and this is the byproduct of our community meeting on March the 30th.
And we're not sitting here saying necessarily everyone's in agreement with this plan.
No, I'm not saying, I have not gotten that agreement.
Okay. And 829, you just tell the board what 829 represents.
829, I'm sorry for the blurriness of it. It was a picture that was taken at night from the residence at 10 Radnor Way. And as you can see, with the current planning buffer, the view west is not only of 240 Radnor Chester Road, but it's all of the commercial properties that were that are west of the residence at Radnor Way. My understanding is that the residence at 14 Radnor Way was purchased in August of 2012. The residence at 10 Radnor Way was purchased, I think, in 2013. This is the view that they were seeing when they purchased their property.
That's it for testimony. I would request before the hearing closes that Exhibits A1 to A29 be accepted and made part of the record, please. And any questions for Shelley or me, certainly.
Mr. Grossel, the last point you made regarding what these folks saw when they bought the property. When they bought the property, they knew that the property next to them was zoned residential, right?
They knew that the R1 buffer existed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the R1 buffer was there, yes.
Nick, can I ask you to go down, and let's talk with all these modifications, exactly what variance relief is being sought based on current plans?
Right.
Like you've eliminated the building height variance and things like that.
We eliminated building height. The building coverage still exists.
Can I ask you to go sort of based on the agenda?
Let's talk to the mic, please.
If you could respond to the chairman's request in the order that these show here.
Okay. The first one is the building area, the building coverage, and we do need a variance on that. Now, as we mentioned before, there is a larger building and more square footage, gross square footage we actually can put on the site by adding floors to the existing building, but we've talked about how that is not feasible. And actually, by right, as Shelley testified also, we could actually have a larger building coverage in what we, or actually, not a larger building coverage, but by right, we could have more square footage because we could build a footprint of.
215,000 square feet.
But you
That's
don't have
square
you don't need square footage relief, you need building coverage relief.
Building coverage,
Right,
correct.
okay.
All right. Next one is, as we talked about, we have the parking structure in the R1 zoning district. And the question there is, do we need a variance? Do we need a special exception? Do we need any relief at all? But that is an issue has been raised by Mr. Ryan, that we do have the our contention is the parking structure already exists in the R1 district. We are certainly expanding on that parking structure in this area here. And then the other item that goes along with that is currently this parking structure is basically on the property line or close to the property line with Radnor Financial, which is the other PB zoning district, and we're extending that as well. Currently, the parking structure is on the property line between the PB and the R1 here, although this R1 and PB is all owned by Radnor Financial, as you can see by the parking lots here for the Radnor Financial building. And in addition to parking structure in the residential zone, we are also extending that parking structure along that setback line.
And my advice to the board is that at the very least, the 10-foot accessory setback, accessory use setback in the rear yard in the R1 portion would apply. This parking garage is a creature of a recent zoning hearing board approval, and therefore is not a non-conforming structure and is not thus a special exception under 101B is simply not available for it. And I also see the size of this as really maybe requiring building setback relief, although there is some ambiguity there. But what I don't think is
My intention, John, is that after we have taken care of all the testimony and the comments from the floor and everything, would be for us to adjourn into an executive session where you can advise us on the legalities of all these things from your perspective, so we can consider all that when we come in to make our decision and have our public discussion. So right now, what I really want to do is just get the list of the current relief, and then I have a couple questions I'm sure others do as well. And then,
just one item on that. Remember that this is existing parking right here. So, our position also is that we're expanding an existing nonconformity because all this is existing parking. And it's still remaining parking, but of course, there is a structure involved in it too. The height of the parking structure is 38 feet. We believe the height in both the PB and the R1 permits the 38-foot structure. In R1, it states that the principal structure, which really is no other structure in this R1 except for this parking structure, is permitted to be 38 feet.
You're not asking for relief?
So I don't believe we need relief on that. As to the impervious coverage, we're decreasing the amount of impervious coverage. It is still over code, but we are decreasing the amount that currently exists on the site. 60C, I think that's just location of parking, and again, that parking exists.
Okay, so you are not asking for impervious relief?
No,
or you
we're not
are?
asking for impervious relief. It's less
Okay.
than the current.
Okay.
And then the same with 60C regarding location of the parking. It is existing nonconformity as to location of the parking. Again, we're not increasing that existing nonconformity as to the location of the parking. The buffer strip, we're adding the buffer strip along the residential zone. I don't believe we need relief for that. That was number 6 on the application. And then on 280-4, we are asking for relief in the size of the parking spaces in the parking structure, not the surface parking. Currently, the parking spaces in this parking structure are 8.5 by 19. We are asking for the same size in any addition to the parking structure, that they also would be 8.5 by 19.
Is that
I
it?
believe that is it.
So you're asking for a building coverage variance, a variance to put a parking structure in the R1 district,
Although, again,
and also extending the structure along that same line, the property line. So that's a yard relief, right?
it would be, again, I would argue that perhaps, that would be permitted. John may have a different view on that, but,
But that's what you want to be able to do to the extent
Yeah.
you need approval.
right.
And then under 280-4, you want a variance with regard to size of parking spaces
Correct.
in the structure.
To make it consistent with what is currently there.
Yeah. Okay.
And I believe that, I don't know if it's in PB, but I believe the size of parking spaces and parking structures 9 by 19. I know in other areas of the code, it mentions it. I don't believe I see it in PB. I don't know if Kevin knows off the top of his head. In PLO, I know it says 9 by 19, in parking structures.
Mr. Cornelio, the portion of the parking garage to be, located within R1 will be higher than 20 feet, will it not?
That is correct. That is correct. But remember, too, it's really the principal structure now. It's the principal structure in the R1 district.
But it's an accessory structure on the property. You're going to have one big property, and it's an accessory structure.
It is an accessory structure on the property, although, again, it's in the R1 area, there's no other structure in the R1 area except for the parking structure. Remember, we've moved everything out of the R1 area now.
I understand your position.
It sounds like something, well,
Yeah, the parking space size is defined in the dash at 284. You said you were looking for that?
yeah, we would need that because
9 feet 6 inches by 20 feet is the
correct. We
definition.
wouldn't, as I said, we wouldn't be requesting that for the surface parking, but we would be requesting it for parking in the parking structure. As I mentioned, other areas of the code does refer to 9 by 19 in parking structures, although it does not appear in the PB area.
Is the reason for that is it in order to make sure that you have sufficient spaces? Because if you had the dimensions called for by the code, you're running short on spaces?
I think it's more than in parking structures. Generally, the spaces are smaller, from a standards, from an industry standard. And
I
don't
think
know if
someone wants to help you with that.
Alex, if you get sworn in here, you have to say who you are and what your profession is and all
Swear to
that.
tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name, spell.
Alex Tweedy, Tweedie.
And Alex, you're a professional engineer registered in the state of in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Okay.
The one major point and what we believe to be the reason that the PLO speaks to a different size for the parking structure is structurally to build it, the material comes in 60-foot bays, A traditional parking stall is 18, a 24-foot Allen 18. So industry constructs the structural members at 60 feet. The current Radnor code is 20, 22, and 20, which is a 62-foot bay, which actually means you're ordering custom pieces all the time. So we believe they realized the inefficiency of that and changed a specific parking structure stall to allow a slightly shorter bay to fit within that 60-foot footprint.
This structure is only going to be, you said, for employees of the tenants, right? For, not for...
It's for the sites, the surface is going to be for visitor and for ADA compliance. Although we will have an elevator in the building or in the parking structure, this is for the employees and their associates.
So the leases are going to require no one to have one of these monster SUVs who works in the buildings, right?
I guess
We'll have no big spaces at all for any of these employees.
Other than the ADA compliance spaces, no. There'll be, and just to supplement what Alex said, the internal ramping has been designed and engineered. It's not just a matter of parking spaces and quantity of parking spaces. It's the internal ramping for the garage that was engineered by Tim Haas. If we go to the wider spaces, it changes the whole ramping design and changes the whole feasibility of the garage.
Is there anything else you wanted to put before the board now before we ask some other questions?
I have.
I would just like to add one thing to supplement the building coverage. We referred to this 215,000 square foot building that could go on 8.14 acres of ground, including the R1. And we're saying that we're willing to stipulate to under 171,000. When we look at building coverage, we understand what the code says. I mean, it's black and white, and we understand what they're saying in the code. But what we've done is we're trading off building height and excavation. Instead of working with the grade, we're trading off the excavation so that the presentation to the community and the residential community will be under the 27 feet. And we're also trading off higher density and square footage for the property by conceding that we'll go to 171,000 square feet. So although the footprint of the building itself creates a negative or a requirement for building coverage relief, it's because of the trade-offs that we've done as far as allowing additional less square footage on the property, and also for the view to hold the view under the 27 feet from the community.
I have a couple of questions. You talked about a deal in your lease with Mainline Health with regard to parking. So I'm assuming they made you give them all kinds of extra spaces just in case, right? And they probably don't use a lot of them. Right?
Well, in actuality, it depends which day of the week you're driving by there. Mainline Health, you know this maybe I ought to give you a little background. This property supports 5 hospitals. Their administrative staff for 5 hospitals that are within approximately a 10-mile radius of the area. The facility is not only an administrative facility, it's also used as a training and indoctrination facility where they bring their associates in from the various hospitals. At least 3 times a month, maybe 4 times a month, they bring in supplemental visitors from the hospitals, and they use the flex spaces. Currently, they use on a daily basis approximately 390 spaces to 410 spaces, depending on which day of the week it is. But the flex spaces that they consume could be as many as 75 to another 90. So there are days there that the ramp is full, the upper deck is full, and the balance of the parking is full. They wanted and they required the 491 spaces that we've given them. And I know it's hard to understand how 491 spaces get consumed on a 100,000 square foot building, because
No, it's not. It's not. There are different kinds of uses.
Yeah, many commercial buildings in the past would go with 3 to 1 or 3.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. In today's, and I'm sure from the attorneys on this board, they'll appreciate this.
We're all attorneys.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Well,
Today,
probably-
we're all attorneys.
Yeah, you're all, then I'm sure that you all appreciate it. There's no more, very few firms maintain libraries today. The square footage per employee has dropped down from the average of 220 to 250 down to between 100 and 150, which changes the whole dynamic of parking ratios that used to exist on commercial properties. So that's the issue with me.
Well, you've spoken about this building being underparked, the new building.
Yes, by
Are
about
you-
22 spaces.
So you're relying on the use of some of these flex spaces if you fully lease the new building?
Yes.
And on a day when they have all the world in for training, what happens?
They've conceded that they're willing to give us 20 to 30 of those flex spaces back if required to be able to get the building built. We'll still have 4.5.
You haven't asked for any relief with regard to the requirements for parking spaces?
Yeah, we comply with the code.
Well, the overall parking.
You will
Overall
comply?
parking,
Okay.
Even with the proposal, still complies with code.
But it might be at variance with contractual relationships you have currently.
I have a verbal okay on that one.
Now, the other question I had is about hardship, and I have to ask this question because it didn't come up. There is an existing building here that's working, and what is the hardship involved in replacing it with this proposal? What is the hardship that compels this?
Well, as we talked about it previously, you got a split zoning district here. And the fact of the split zoning district makes it a hardship, not only with setbacks, but building coverage and everything else that we're dealing with here, including the use of the parking structure itself. And as we mentioned, I believe last time, that this R1 zone circles the PB area, as you see it here. And the effect of the R1 zone has created a split zoning district here, which creates a hardship for the property itself and the use of the property.
But I mean, you have an existing mainline health building today that's functioning and is leased, and you have an existing other building, whatever that address is there, and that's functioning. I don't know if it's leased or not. I guess it's not if you're about to knock it down.
And remember, this building's all non-conforming, too. Non-conforming not only use, but as to setbacks.
But I mean, they are usable buildings. They are, or aren't they? I mean,
No,
if
this
not,
building, the existing building on 252, if the existing tenants don't use that building, there's a strong likelihood nobody would use the building. It's very dated. It needs a significant amount of improvements to
It may
it.
not be desirable, but it's usable.
It's being
One
used.
can occupy it, it's being used.
It's being used today, yes, Mr. Cutler.
Just wanted to clarify that on the record.
Just so you also know, one of the options that's out there, being very candid with you, is that Mainline is looking for consolidation for some additional space. One of the hardships that exists is that if I don't build them this space, they may not exercise their option for the balance of the building when their renewal comes up in 2020. So in order for us to be able to maintain the ongoing administrative relationship with them for this facility, we have to offer them the additional space. And we can't build it. We're sort of between two places where we can't build it because of the existing non-disturbance. But if we don't build it, Newtown Square or somebody else may have Mainline Health, being very candid.
Yeah, and one thing that we have to remember, too, as we mentioned previously, currently in this residential area, you have a number of nonconformities. We're actually reducing the nonconformities in that residential area. Also, as has been mentioned previously, that it's just not feasible that we could add another floor and a half or 2 floors to this building, but it's just not feasible because of the certain circumstances that exist there. And that is why that we needed the relief on the building coverage requirement from the code.
And Mr. Cornelia, when you say it's not feasible, it's not economically convenient given the current lease arrangement. Is it technically feasible if you chose to take a chance and perhaps upset your current tenant by saying, hey, we're slapping another floor on this building. Don't mind us, we'll be done here. in no time.
You would actually have to-
It really is it a question of economic inconvenience or technical non-feasibility?
It is technical non-feasibility. The superstructure that currently holds this building wasn't designed to hold another 2 stories on top. While we would like to be able to say, okay, well, we'll move the whole first floor out and then put the superstructure in to be able to hold it, and then we'll move you back in. That's not a practical situation for us or for our relationship. And we have a wonderful relationship with the group at Mainline, and it just would be a shame to see us lose the opportunity, not because we're not willing to make the investment, but because we're hamstrung with being able to put them onto our property and have a consolidation. Our ideal scenario, as long as they would be willing to agree to it, this becomes their campus, and it would not be MOB. It would be totally administrative. And while they're not here to speak to that today, and I have no documentation from them, but I do know that they have about 65 to 70,000 square feet of other spaces that are in Exton, Riddle, Wynwood, that they're considering bringing here if we get the approvals that are necessary to be able to do it. And there is no guarantee that they'd bring them, but by the same token, I can't even offer it to them if we don't have these approvals.
Any other questions? Now, is there anybody who wants to be heard from the audience on this?
Thank you for your patience and letting us present and going through our whole program here this evening. Sometimes
I'm grateful for your time. Thank you.
Well, let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll hear from the members of the audience.
Come right for right.
I'll turn the button off.
Okay, we're back in session. Anybody like to, oh, I don't see Mr. Cornelia. Is he back? Oh, there you are. Okay. I was looking for you in the front row. Sorry. Please come up and be sworn and give your name.
Ma'am, if you raise your right hand, you do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do. My name is Virginia Hart, H-A-R-T, and I live at 15 Radnor Way, and I own another property on the street at 3 Radnor Way. And first, I would like to thank you, Shelley, for all the effort you have.
Is there a hand up?
Oh, sorry. I would like to thank Shelley for meeting with the neighbors and taking a lot of our comments to consideration and trying to work with us. There were a few additional comments and thoughts, though, that I wanted to bring to Shelley's attention, or maybe he can answer them. One is, I would like to see at some point, and I think it would behoove the board to see, if we could see an elevation looking from, I know you showed us one where we saw 14 Radnor Way, but that's the house that sits further back. I'd like to see in relation to where like 254 Radnor Way sits, and so we can get a feeling for how large this new building is going to be in terms of dominating our neighbor's house, the Diamonds, which is really right immediately next to this new building. So I would like to just see that additional drawing to get an impact on that building. And my other thought about that building is it possible, Shelley, to, instead of having a whole additional story...
Well, excuse me, you can't address questions to the applicant. You're here
I'm
to
sorry.
testify, give comments, state facts. And then some of this may or may not be relevant to what we're doing today, but may be relevant to a later process of planning and such. So if you just
Okay, well, my issue
put
is...
it out on the table and we'll hear it. And
Okay,
figure out what-
sorry. Thanks. My issue is the height of the building. I feel that the height of the building could be able to be addressed with fewer stories. Either build it on top of the garage, put it in the middle between the two buildings. I think the height of the building is not a hardship. I don't think it needs to be that tall. I think it's overpowering on our small neighborhood. Also, we were promised, it's not mentioned here, but I wanted it on the record, that we asked for shades at our neighborhood meeting to prevent the lights going into our homes. He did promise to give us electronic shades that were time sensitive, so at the end of the business day, the shades would go down. It would prevent any evening light shining into the homes. I'd like to have that on the record of being requested and approved and promised by the applicant.
Where would these shades be?
In the office building.
Okay.
On the windows. I also feel that the height of the garage is not, it should, the height of the garage is too tall, as well as it should not be in our R1 buffer. We all bought our homes on that street, understanding and believing that there was an R1 buffer. And I feel that it is incumbent on us to be promised by our representatives that that R1 buffer stay in place. My additional comment is, where's the traffic study? How can we approve anything here? How can the neighbors feel comfortable with it? How can you feel comfortable until we see a traffic study? That wasn't even addressed tonight. I didn't
Well,
see
there is a
anything.
traffic study that was submitted at the prior hearing, and I believe it's in the record. And questions were asked about it. And frankly, I think we still have concerns over it.
Okay.
But there was a, done by Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. It was A11, and it was submitted and
Well,
and
I just
discussed.
want to concur then that I have great concerns over the traffic, especially with the biomed application and all that additional traffic that's going to be presented. I have also a concern about the, where is the stormwater management going? I didn't see that addressed. Where is that going to be put on the property? I didn't see that.
Well, keep in mind, we're not talking about land development approval or building approval or grading approval. This hearing has a very limited scope.
Okay.
And for instance, the height, they now have revised their plans, and they now conform with the height restrictions that are applicable.
But you
so they're
asked
not
about-
asking us for relief for that. Now, you could raise this issue when they're before other boards looking for approval of a specific plan and specific building. but it's not really something we can deal with in this forum because they're not asking us for a height variance at this point.
I understand that, but I thought you asked a very good question in regards to their hardship. I don't see it that they have a hardship where they should be allowed to build such a tall building that overwhelms the neighborhood.
That's something, we will consider their hardship or lack of hardship when we figure out what we're doing with this
Okay.
decision.
Fine, thank you very much then.
Ma'am, if you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And state your name, please.
My name is Linda Trebbing. I live at
Spell
not
that.
TREB as in boy, ING. I live at 9 Radnor Way. And the concerns I have are, again, with respect to the buffer, the fact that from these plans, it looks like there's parking there, and we're just going to put a little structure over it. But the reality is that the ramp, they're going to put a 3-story parking garage on top of that. They put a 38-foot structure. And that's a huge difference. And all of the parking, this parking structure, all of the build-out on that, the majority of that's going to be where our neighborhood is and where we can see it. Right now, we don't see much parking. But I think that's going to be a huge issue for us because it's going to be right up close and personal. And again, I'm not an expert, but I kind of went into the regs because you have them there for us to look at. From what I can see, there's a requirement that a building have a 100-foot setback from the R1 property. From PB, if a PB is next to an R1, there's a 100-foot setback, which I think is that R1 buffer. Losing that, I think, is going to be bad for this, is going to be possibly compromising our homes and our neighborhood, but it also opens the door later. So that's a concern that I have.
What does it open the door to? What is?
Well, if that buffer is gone, because they're asking for a relief with respect to that buffer. If you remove that buffer completely, can they not go and do other things that normally would be restricted by an R1 buffer? I don't know. I'm raising as I've seen things being approved for one use, and then down the road there may be something else that none of us thought of. The buffer was there because it was basically our neighborhood's a little island. And we have building around us, and we maintain our yards and put plantings up, and we have kids riding tricycles and whatnot. So I think we do appreciate the trees that were put on the plan. However, the trees on the current plan only extend up into the parking garage. They don't extend all the way along the property line. And we would like to see that happen. And from what I can understand, the parking, because a lot of times things get dealt with in planning, but I don't know that the parking garage will be going to the planning board. Because for the previous approval in 2009, it did not go to the planning board because it was a structure. So I don't know, there's some areas there, and you guys obviously understand that more than I do, but that's a big concern, is that if the parking garage will not be subject to planning board approval, then the things and Mr. Gross had a lot of great ideas of ivy plantings and things like that, which are wonderful. But if it doesn't go to planning board, then those could fall between the cracks. And that's a concern that we have on that. Again, impervious coverage is a big concern. Because we're all paying stormwater tax now, obviously. The current, I think there's an R1 property and a PB property. And I don't see the original application, I believe, asked for a variance to rezone the R1 to PB. I don't see that in here.
No, we have no power to rezone. No application to us.
Okay.
Request rezone, nor would we have any authority to consider the matter. That's a legislative act that would have to be done by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, so if you consolidate the two properties, if he purchases the 252 Radnor Way and they consolidate the two into PB, is that in effect doing that?
No, it
You
does
can't
not
move the
change the
boundary
zone.
line by consolidation. The boundary, you can have a split zone property, and if there were two separate properties on either side of the line, you don't change the line by moving them together.
So that section of the property remains R1
until a separate zoning amendment
Until it's
is enacted
changed.
by the
Okay.
commissioners.
Then, that being said, the impervious coverage calculations, it's been asserted that it will be no more than what's currently there. And my question is, are the calculations taking into consideration the R1 piece of property? Because the impervious coverage requirements for R1 are significantly different. at 22% versus 55 for PB. And I don't see anywhere where that's addressed.
Well, we've been asked for relief with regard to the impervious coverage percentage, but that's not the end of the story with regard to things like stormwater management and impervious coverage. There still is a planning process that's going to very thoroughly review those things, not as a matter necessarily of zoning, to the extent that it will be the zoning as revised by us tonight if we were to give them the variance. But there are other issues that they will have to deal with. The last has not been heard on this issue.
Oh, thank you.
And this isn't your last forum to raise it. So keep in mind that we have a very limited scope of what we're being asked to do. And also, when you talked about what may happen in the future with regard to the buffer, if we give relief, we're going to give very specific relief. We are not giving relief in general to do other things that may require variance relief in the future. That will involve a separate application, a separate hearing, a separate chance for all to be heard, pro and con, and may or may not be granted. We are not obligated, if we grant relief today on this, to grant it tomorrow on that.
Thank you for the clarification on that. I think so the extension of the parking garage into the R1 buffer, again, that's of great concern to our neighborhood, especially because it's a 38-foot structure. In looking at the codes, 28016, that's in the R1, there's a height restriction for an accessory building at 20 feet. And it seems to me that a parking garage is an accessory building, and again, that's your area, so 38 feet.
That's something we will consider
Thank
when
you.
we're deciding what to do here.
I just want to clarify, because I thought I heard that, but I just want to make sure that I was hearing properly.
One question, could you do me the favor, it's going to be a little bit difficult in the plan, but you indicated you're at 9 Radnor Way, and your neighbor testified she owns 15 and 3. Could you, as an approximate matter, give us a sense of where those properties would be in context of that plan?
Our house is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Sue's, Virginia's residence is here.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. She's here, and here. Those are our homes.
Okay.
And then the other home that you own is probably about there. Is that?
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for your time.
Hi. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
And state your name, please.
My name is Zhe First name is Z-H-E, last name
Okay,
L-I.
slow.
First name is Z-H-E, last name is L-I.
Z-H-E?
Yeah, Z like zebra,
Uh-huh.
H like the
Okay,
H.
Z-H.
Yeah, E.
E, and
Yeah.
next name?
My last name is L-I, Lee. Yeah.
L-I.
I go by Robin, so make it very easier. I'm living right here, 14 Radnor Way. So I'm a close one to all of this development. My major concern is the size of the garage. And right now, at current existing structure is mostly like a ramp. So from my home, I barely can see anything there except the light at night. But my concern is that the new proposal would be like 30 feet, 3 tall building right there. Even the Mr. Golden gonna shield with the trees or whatever vine, but still from my yard, I would see the tall building instead open space. So that's really my major concern here. Is only see from my yard only probably less than 100 feet from that building. So that's something I really don't expect to see when I bought this property less than 2 years ago.
Now, you're saying you're 100 feet from your yard to which point?
This is my house, and I think my yard is right here, the close one. Okay. Yeah. This is my property line, I guess. Yeah.
That on this one.
Yeah, this is my house. To the garage building, not to the office building. I mean, the distance to view to the garage building is really even closer to the office building they proposed. So.
Before we deal with this issue, is there any other issue you wanted to raise?
You said this is limited scope of the committee.
Yes.
Another concern is like stormwater. Just
Oh, okay.
cover is not your
That's
concern
not
at
it.
the moment. Yes,
Only-
size of the building, it's really my
Okay.
big concern.
about 210 between that corner.
No, that's to the building, but for my yard, my property is much closer. Yeah,
Property line is 1.
yeah.
Is that not screened by these trees that are going to be planted, or?
Well, I believe the request was, the buffer yard requirement is along the R1 buffer, so it would end at the
Yeah, that's one thing,
PLO.
yeah.
I believe there was a request to extend the
Extend
buffer
to the
all the way
end.
through, and Shelley can speak to that.
The current buffer, the R1 requirement for buffer ended at this point. Oh, I apologize, I'm sorry. I apologize. The buffer for the R1 ended at the PLO R1 area. We specifically extended it into the PLO area so that we could, it's actually beyond the 14 Radnor Way residents, so that we would be screening their view of this area from, as they look west. Now, we can, if this would satisfy some of the concerns, we can extend the tree line buffer to further into the PLO area. If that would satisfy some of the concerns that have been raised, we would be willing to concede that to accommodate some of the concerns that have been raised.
Would that be of interest to you, Mr. Lee?
It's better than nothing, but still high building is my concern. Yeah.
Just keep in mind, this elevation for this home is at 120 feet at ground level. The buffer is at 112 feet at elevation. We will be then adding 25-foot trees to the 112 feet, which will take it up to 137 feet, which is above the existing home. It's above the roof of the existing home. So the screening will be screening the entire property line from the buffer. The tree buffers will be screening the entire property from the current residents. And unlike the trees that exist today, these trees will be green 24/7, and the density of the trees will be significant, so there will be no view penetration from 14 Radnor Way to the property, and from all of the properties. They're all going to be screened from the property, which they aren't screened today.
Well, Mr. Lee, if they put in the buffer so that you can't see that height of garage at that location, would that alleviate your concern? If you could not see it from your property?
Make me feel a little better. Yeah, but still I don't think the tree line would cover all the noise and stuff. But,
So your problem isn't just visual, it's also?
Yes. Right now I don't have a visual impact because of the garage, because of all the ramp, but still the light is my major concern. But after the proposal, I think the size become concern to me. Yeah.
Just to address that issue also, there's two other points that maybe I didn't make clear. The side of the garage is solid concrete, and the corner of the garage would also be solid concrete, so that there will be no light or sound spillover from this side of the garage into the residential area. And the current parking is all the way to the line. What we're doing is we're eliminating the current parking situation, and we're putting the current parking goes to an elevation of 112, which is within 8 feet of the elevation, the surface elevation of the existing dwelling. What we're doing is we're actually taking the existing parking and excavating it down 8 feet and putting a retaining wall on this side of the plantings, so that light spillover from vehicles and traffic would be below 8 feet below the current 112, and it would be 16 feet below the current surface of the home. So it's actually going to be 16 feet below, that's where the cars will be driving, 16 feet below the surface of the current home.
Is there anything else you'd like to put on the record, Mr. Lee?
Actually, just remember one thing about the type of tree, and I'm living the 14 other side to the lower form. I think all like screen pretty much gone by now. So whatever Mr. Sheldon would put there, I hope it lasts more than a couple of years.
Well, in actuality, and it's a very good question, because Mr. Tang asked us for upright U's when we had the town meeting, and when I spoke to Mr. Tang on Tuesday, he reminded me that he wanted upright U's. And what we've done is we went to the landscaper, and we said, what we want robust plants, and the plants that he's giving us are much more robust than an upright U. These are going to be 25 and 30-year plants. By the time these are done, they'll be somewhere between 40 and 50 feet in total height. And we're going to be maintaining them. That's part of, I didn't state that before, but you can certainly put that in there. It's the obligation of the property, our property, to maintain the landscape buffer. So we will take care of those. Anything else?
No, that's all from me.
While I have you, I'd like to make one response to the shade issue, which was brought up. We did concede that we're going to look into either glass or shades for the eastern view, the eastern elevation, the western view for the Radnor Way residents
Yeah, I think that's not really an issue that's going to impact what we're being asked to do tonight. That will be an issue for another board at another time before this.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Sure. Take your time.
You do solemnly swear or affirm this testimony you're about to give will be the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name, please.
My name is Richard Hudak, Hudak. I currently reside at 10 Radnor Way, and as Sheldon stated earlier, I did buy purchase the property in 2013. And I'll give you a representation of where I am on here. This is a cul-de-sac right here. This is a cul-de-sac right here, and I am at the, I guess, most eastern part of the cul-de-sac, so I'm located about here, I believe. And there was a couple of pictures.
Excuse me, the cul-de-sac has either exactly or about how many homes around it?
I believe actually on the cul-de-sac, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 homes.
Thank you.
So there's nothing on this side, actually, but it's just
Thank you.
like that side. I believe you can see my house in one of these pictures. Actually, this picture right here is actually taken from right around my property. Actually, my grass line is probably right about here, and my house is set back from there. Yeah, that's probably the best representation of that. But I guess my biggest concern is, again, like everyone else said, and I don't want to be a broken record, but the R1 buffer zone was put there for a reason, I believe. God bless you. Sorry. I would love to maintain that as best we can. As Sheldon said, I bought the property in 2013, and it was what it was at that time. He stated it's a win-win for all of us. I'm not really sure that I'm seeing the win for us. I understand there are some trees being put in place. However, we are getting a lot bigger structure that's invading our R1 buffer zone. It was already given the approval before to have that a little bit of room in there. And actually, if you look at a satellite view, I know they talked about a ramp. The ramp is actually at ground level. On this property, I know they say that this structure existing right here is actually, coming all the way this far in R1. Most of this is ramp, which is actually, not elevated whatsoever. It's parking lot, basically. The actual structure itself and any kind of parking starts right about this line. And this actual diagonal is giving a really good representation of actually where it starts. So the variance they were given before, and I might not be using the right word because I'm not too familiar with the terms exactly, but whatever they were given before to actually extend this into this area is very small. So they're asking for, I would say, 6 times that going into our R1 area. So it seems like it's excessive. And I understand that Sheldon represented it as a hardship. I didn't understand how we even proved it as a hardship to anyone. And I know you guys asked that question, and I'm thankful you did. If he wants to, he can wait as long as he wants, and he can build his building on top of the other building. And the fact that the foundation wasn't built for a 3-story building, I can't say that that's really our fault. And it's not his either, because he bought the building a year ago, a year and a half ago. But I don't think he did a very good job of proving that it's an actual hardship. So what I asked, excuse me, when we went to one of these town hall meetings that we had that Sheldon mentioned, is that if we could move the parking structure back to the actual zone that is designed to be in the PB zone. And what he told me, and I'm summarizing exactly what he said, I don't have the verbatim because I didn't have a recording at the time, but he told me that if I do that, then I don't have to put up any kind of special concrete wall like he was going to put to enclose it, and I don't have to put any kind of lattice work that I was going to do for here. So it was kind of like one or the other. He asked me what I wanted, and I said I want both. And he said he couldn't do that. So I know he says he has our best interests at heart. I'm not exactly sure that's true. So that's one thing I just wanted to bring to your attention. He also stated today that he's pushing the traffic further down away from our community. And in actuality, because of the way the driveway is coming in like this, it's actually bringing the traffic even closer to our community. The original plans that he first showed actually had the traffic coming through the middle here and getting to this structure. In this instance, he is moving the building further, which is a good thing, and it's out of the actual R1 zone that it shouldn't be in anyway. However, he is sending all of the trucks, all of the cars right next to us. So it is actually, in actuality, moving the traffic even closer, all the traffic that's going to go to this building even closer to our homes. So, and like Robin said, it's hard for me to believe that a planting zone across there is going to alleviate any of this noise that's going to be coming very close to our homes. Let's see what else I have here. There was one other thing, and we mentioned it in the January meeting. There was a small square that is actually township owned. I believe it's right in here. And I'm not really certain, and the picture that he showed with all the trees across here, I know this is township owned. I'm not really certain how he is going to be allowed to plant trees in a township owned area. I guess he has to get some kind of special release for that. I know that may not be part of your concern, but I know we're talking about these trees helping us, and because this is moving into our area and we're going to put a buffer, which I do appreciate the buffer, and it is going to help. However, I'm not really sure how he's going to put anything in this area because it is township owned. So I know we're talking about different heights from our ground levels at our houses to his ground level of his building, but the real comparison is not only just my ground level, it's my eye level. Obviously, I'm almost 6 feet tall. My eye level's at least 5 feet off the ground. When I go to my second story window, I even get a higher elevation. And the third story as well, I get a higher elevation as well. So I understand that he's putting a 25-foot tree in place to give a nice buffer. But as I go up, the more I see. Now, I bought the property the way it is, and I'm okay with the way it is right now. I did not ask him to change it, so he's implying that this is a win for us, in my view, and I think my neighbor's view is that we're saying it's not. So I would like you to take that in consideration as well. Sheldon also says that, he's making concessions to get to this point, and he's moved everything out from the original very robust plan that he brought in January to this. But in actuality, he really has no right to be in the R1 zone to begin with. He should have never asked for it, and I don't think he should be asking for it now, to be in that spot. So it's not really a concession. He's not making any concessions because he really shouldn't be there to begin with. And I think that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me regarding anything. And I'm sorry I was a little long-winded, but I had...
Well, based upon what you said, I have a question for the applicant, and that is, are you planning to put trees in that township-owned property? And if so, by what right are you going to plant them and maintain them? By the way, what's on that little piece of property? I mean, is there any building or facility of any sort?
Originally designed to be, from what I understand, a potential for a sewer treatment area.
Pumping station or something?
They were going to put a pumping station there, I think. It's this 50 by 50 piece of ground. There are trees there now. I mean, if we can't put it in there, we'll just plant around it. I mean, we can go to the perimeter of the 50 by 50 area without any issue at all, and still have the buffer. So it would just circle the property and then go further down the line. We'll either get the permission to do it or go ahead and plan around it.
And you have enough area to do that if you have to go around
sure.
it?
Here's the line right here. You put the planting line right there. It's right here, 50 by 50.
Mr. Curtis, while we're on that planting issue, the area on the new plan that is shown as, I guess, the PICO access to a substation, is that a requirement that you're subject to because of a PICO easement, or does the inclusion of that on the plan create a problem if the decision were to extend towards that garage, the buffer planting?
We're not prevented from planting by the PICO easement. PICO can come in and decide to cut them down if this gravel driveway that's proposed here. I was just talking to Nick. We can go back to PICO and move it here. There's no reason why it can't be in this area here, and the plantings continue down along this area.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question, sir? And that is,
yes, Mr. Carter.
Is there an alternative, not expressing a preference for now, but just asking as a matter of the physical nature, is there an alternative that would keep the garage further away from the property line and supplement it with something that provides parking elsewhere? Or is that a problem involving the standard size and materials and such?
No, it involves the ramping, the internal ramping in the garage. We did go back to Tim Haas and asked him if we took, keeping in mind that the existing ramp comes this way right now, and it does start here, and it does elevate up here, and we can show it on the picture. This one section here that we are parking in currently, which is in the R1 zone, is where they were intended to enter the garage and create the ramps that meets with this existing ramp and then goes up. We went back to Tim Haas, their organization, and asked them if they could engineer it without having this one section here. And the response was virtually impossible because they're actually connecting to this one ramp that exists back here in order to get the ramping to go into the garage. So currently, what happens is that the cars, I think this shows it. The cars, this is the R1 right here that Richard was just talking about. The cars come this way, they go down to the edge of the property line, they turn and they meet the ramp here. And what the current plan is to actually have the ramp start here, and it'll be surface parking underneath there, and then it'll be up, the ramp would actually join here and then come in this way and then go up that way. This is where they have to join the ramp to be able to get, because keep in mind the slope of the ground is higher here than it is here. So here it's at 112, so the ramp is actually at level here, but because the ground goes away from the ramp and the ground is at 100 here, the elevation of the ramp continues through this particular process. So the scenario where after the town meeting, I went back to Tim Haas and said, okay, if we take this one section out, what is the impact? And he said, can't get up to the upper levels because the ramping is coming from here, from this side.
And that's a problem because you're regrading that to lower the grade of the...
Regrading and the ramping right now, this whole structure that exists today is built starting at 112 and then elevates, the ramp is actually at 112, it begins at 112 and it actually goes up to the second story. So in order for you to be able to get to the access to the ramp, you have to get it here, and they're building a ramp that's coming up from 104 to meet this ramp and then come into the garage that way. So although it would be nice to be able to take this one section out, it's going to make it virtually impossible to grab this ramp if we do that. Now, as far as the discussion about being in R1, the R1 line for the adjacent neighborhood ends right here. So this R1 buffer that exists on our own property is actually adjacent against PLO, which is all here. So when we talk about the garage, we're talking about a garage that's sitting adjacent to PLO by over 100 feet. So from this point here to here is over 100 feet. So the setback on the initial part of the garage is not in the residential zone. It's on our own R1 zone. It's in our own R1 buffer, but it's not adjacent to the R1 buffer that has residents in it.
And just one other thing is the board's aware, as we know in A8, currently existing in that R1 zone is current parking, part of the ramp, a building, office building here with paving and parking for that office building that's located
On 252.
on 252, which is being removed. So currently, we have a situation where there's already parking, a building, and surface parking, and no buffer, and we're replacing it with an area that probably has less of an impact on the R1 zone with additional buffering.
And just keeping in mind, this is Ms. Hart raised the issue about the Mr. and Mrs. Diamond's house, which is right here. As you can see, and I don't have the exact measurement on this drawing, it's probably 300 feet away from the building. Their particular residence, and their residence, their height is 126.33. So that's the distance from here to here, and this is their property now. They're within 20, I think it's 22 feet of an office building sitting right here now. We're eliminating the nonconformance that sits against Mr. and Mrs. Diamond's house.
Have the Diamonds taken a position on this?
They're not here, and they didn't come to the town hall meeting. So,
Answer
Mr.
your question really quickly. The reason they didn't come to the town hall meeting, they had a death in the family, so they were unavailable to come. I don't know if they're still in a situation where they are unable to attend something like this. I have not spoken with them because I wanted to give them their space for their grieving time. So they are not here to comment, that's true, but I want to give you a possible reason why they're not.
The Ms. Hart's residence is right here, and while she's further away, her house is actually sitting right next her, although she's at, I think, 15 Radnor Way. Her entrance is back here, that's her official address. But as you can see, Ms. Hart's house is even further away than any of these houses. And as far as Richard's house, his house sits in this area over here, and his elevation is higher than the 120 that exists at 14 Radnor Way, and he's even further away than these areas here from the parking structure that is going to be against the PLO and not against the residential area. The goal was to take the parking structure.
Mr. Chairman?
Push it all the way back. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Could we get the testimony from the folks who are here who want to share with us their perspective? And then if we want to go back to the applicant with questions, we can do that.
So Sheldon actually brought up a couple points that I would like to note on as well, and I don't want to go back and forth, and that's exactly why.
Let's wait, because this was right. Is there anyone else who's going to want to speak who hasn't spoken? Rich, are you speaking?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I just have a couple more points, if that's okay.
okay, please try to be concise. We're
Apologize
getting
for
late.
I know, we are getting late, and I have to get home as well. I believe the reason why this was put in here is not just because our houses, aren't right here, it's sight lines. And that's the biggest issue. Also in this area, there are electrical lines that run through this area as well. Now, I don't know the exact rules, but I don't believe that you can put trees when there's electrical lines that are up in the air. I know that, I don't even know if you can put them over an area that they're buried underneath because of the roots.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not sure
keep in
about
mind, if any of approvals, whether here or anywhere else, require that, and they can't do it, then that's a problem they're going to have to solve.
that. Okay.
Okay.
It was just the fact that we're trading, it seems like we're trying to trade encroachment into the R1 area for a tree buffer. So that just seems like what he's giving to us for us to possibly concede or let you guys decide that this is okay, is with the buffer being there. So that's why I just brought that point up. But I think the major point is that the R1 was there, and the current way it is right now, it is in that area, some of the parking structures. Just because it's there now, it doesn't mean that it was right to be there. It was given before, yes, but just because they're decreasing it, I don't think it makes it any more right than it was before, or less right than it was before. It still is, this is the rule, you should not have commercial structures in the R1 area, and that's our biggest issue, is that it's encroaching. I know it's going to be more money for him to move this stuff, and in actuality, he may have to actually decrease the size of this building so he has the right parking structure if he can't go here. It's a monetary issue for him, and I hope that doesn't affect us because his monetary issue. And I don't believe that's a hardship. It is a hardship in his pocket, but in actuality, that can't be considered a hardship. And that's all I have. I'm sorry for taking as much time as I did.
Thank you, Mr. Hudak.
Thank you.
And you do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name, please.
Richard F., as in Fuller, Booker, B-O-O-K-E-R, Richard F. Booker. I live at 455 Belrose Lane, so I'm about a quarter mile away on the other side of the bridge. But I do consider this my neighborhood. And the folks here are my neighbors and constituents, and thank you for taking the time. Thanks very much to Shelley and to the Zoning Hearing Board. The building coverage issue, as I understand it, the building coverage will still be in excess of what's permitted, even though he's going to make this plan would make it slightly better. I think that the Zoning Hearing Board should not grant the relief, because if we're going to have a new building, I think that we should try to get it into conformity with our code, number one. Number two, the parking garage, as you've heard, is a major concern to the neighbors, and the issue relates not only to the fact that it extends into the R1 buffer, but also to the amount of review that it's going to be subject to. We believe that this really is a building. It's not a structure, and the way that it's designed here with a solid wall facing the residential area will make it appear to be a building in any event. So if it's a structure, it's not going to get the same kind of review from planning, as I understand it. So we think that a building classification would be more accurate for that parking garage. The other issue is height. This drawing right here. In this drawing, you can see the relative height. This is the existing facility, and here's the new one. And this, once again, is looking from Radnor Chester Road into the development. You can see the height here. This is what is a concern with the height, and it will be significant massing on the site, which will be, which once again is a concern for the neighborhood.
Can I ask a question? That little piece right in the middle there that looks like it sticks up much higher than anything else, what is that? Is that the garage?
Truth or truth, nothing truth?
I do.
And your name, please?
Eric Olds, O-L-D-S. So the building is actually, if you look at it, you have to look at the latest plan.
Actually, I'm interested in this particular drawing.
Well, I want to point it out on the floor.
Okay.
What you're seeing is a three-story building that is that shape.
Right.
And that portion of it that sticks up above that link is what you're seeing in the background. So that's the back side of the L.
Okay, so
This
that's
is-
not the garage.
That's correct. The garage is beyond.
Behind that.
Right. This is a one-story link that is at the 100 elevation of the existing building.
Okay.
This building is at elevation 104, so there's a transition. The way the site is set up, all of these buildings slope naturally with the site. So this building is at 100, I believe this one is approximately 4 feet below that.
Okay, I think you answered my question. I'm
Okay.
sorry to interrupt your testimony, but
The front part, is that 3 stories as well? Of course, the part in question seems to stick up above that line.
Yeah, you have to follow that roof line all the way back, just straight back into the shadow, and then make it.
Oh, so that shadow, that dark place, that's not,
This is the back side of the L of the 3-story building.
so that's at a constant elevation?
Yeah. And
That
this
parapet?
This
or
is a
whatever.
small link building that sits at 1 story between the two.
Okay, I think what was confusing everybody was that shadow made it look like there was something extra. Yeah, okay.
Are there any renderings of the parking structure?
There is one here. And I would say that these are, I would commend D2. I think these are good drawings. But here's the only thing that we can see from the parking garage is right here. And you can see it is, and Shelley said, it's a solid, he wants to make it solid concrete. There's reasons for that, but again, this certainly appears to be a building. And we would argue for this should be building treatment and have the rules applied to it under that provision.
Mr. Booker, if there's not a requirement that that be a solid wall, is the suggestion then to go to more an open frame type of end for that parking structure? I mean, I'm trying to understand your point that because it's a solid wall, it makes it a building as opposed to a structure.
Well, no, I just said that's the appearance. I think that the argument is that it's a building in any event. That solid wall reinforces that assumption. I think the applicant's position is it's a structure and it's not subject to the same requirements as a building. Finally, I would ask that this board take into consideration, if you can, the other pending applications in the nearby area. Villanova, a rest around the corner, was recently approved for the CICD. We have pending approval at 145 King of Prussia Road, which is right down the street from this. And we also have the Caruso development at 771 Lancaster, I think it is. It's right there. All of that is going to cause a great deal of stress on the infrastructure for our neighborhood. So that's one other issue that I'd like you to consider. And just with respect to the issue of the relief that's requested. The point was made that any relief that would be granted in this R1 zone right here would be specific. My view is that once granted, there is a precedence, and that it's easier for future boards and for others to allow further encroachments. And it's the old slippery slope argument, but recognizing that what you're talking about is specific, I would also recommend that we maintain the current requirements so that we not start and tempt future encroachments as well. Thanks very much.
Rich, before you go, future encroachments, if the applicant is agreeing to limit development on the merged parcels to a specified square footage and putting that in as a deed restriction, what are the encroachments that you're thinking of here?
Well, I think that it's very difficult for us to consider what is done in the future, and I think that where there is a way, those agreements, those understandings will be violated in the future. It's human nature, especially over a period of time. So we think that this doesn't comply. We think it's clear. We don't see that there is a hardship, and we would urge that again, I thank Shelley and his people. I think they did a great job, and they really are being very focused on the community. He's really one of the best people, the developers that I've seen, for working with us, and really has done a great job here. But again, we feel that we should maintain, and that we would ask that you uphold the setback and not violate, not grant a hardship in this case, because we don't see a hardship on this particular parking garage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have we heard all there is to hear?
No, just a little bit on...
I should add to that, please.
Yeah, I'll be short. I just want to clarify this whole issue regarding the parking structure and the review for a parking structure. If there was no other building being built on this premises and this was a parking structure, it is correct, would not have to go to land development, because under the MPC, land development only reviews buildings. And that's why the township has been consistent, throughout the years, that if you're just building a parking structure, it does not have to go to land development. But in this instance, you're building a building and a parking structure, and believe me, the Planning Commission is going to review everything here. As we know, a building is defined as a structure with enclosed walls and a roof. And since a parking structure does not have enclosed walls and a roof, that's why it hasn't been considered a building in the past and under the MPC. But in this instance, all of this, if it did get approval here, all of this would be considered as part of the land development process. And they would be looking at the parking structure as well as the building itself. And Shelley, I don't know if you want to add, but be quick because we're approaching 10:30.
I just need the microphone. There's a couple points with reference to Commissioner Booker's the issues raised about the solid wall. I could make it an open wall quite easily. There's a 100-foot by about 10-foot wraparound. The reason why we did this is to make sure that there was no potential light spillover or sound spillover from a garage that would have contained vehicles. You're talking about 100-foot long versus this is almost 500 foot here. This is 100 foot here, and this is about 500 foot here. So the point I'm making is that if the solid wall is an issue, we would certainly open it up if that's what was desired by the community. The one other point that I'd like to make, the roof deck itself is designed to have no light standards on it. While there was several discussions about the views that the current neighborhood sees from Radnor Way, what they're looking at, and I'm not being critical of anything that was said, but what they are looking at right now is asphalt and buildings. This building here that backs up to us is one of them is 3 stories. The one here is 5 stories. What we're offering to do by putting in this very expensive planning buffer, and I'm telling you it's very expensive. So when you talk about out of my pocket, it's significant dollars. We're talking about several $100,000 to do this. And I did this based on the feedback that we got from the March meeting. In essence, what we're doing is we're enhancing their view. We're taking away a view of macadam, asphalt, 3-story commercial building here, 5-story commercial building here, all commercial properties along this area here. Frankly, when you sit on these properties back here, you've got the law firm here that has no buffer. You've got the Penn Medical building right across the street from them that has no buffer. And when they're looking out and they're looking west and seeing our property, they're going to see 25 and 30-foot trees. And they're looking at a law firm here, which is in their backyard, that has absolutely zero buffer. And they're looking at a property across the street on Radnor Way, which has no buffer. Finally, Richard raised a point about traffic and noise. His property is actually closer to Radnor Chester Road than it is to our property. So if we're going to talk about noise and traffic, the traffic that's on Radnor Chester Road creates more noise for him and his home than anything that we're going to have on this property.
Although you will be contributing more cars to Radnor Chester Road.
Yes, but
with failed intersections at both ends.
I'd like to address that. It's 83 cars by the traffic study, and I'm not a maven on traffic studies, so I can't comment on any of this. It's 83 cars that the experts say that has the impact on this. And that's based on a 70,000 square foot building. If we tore down the building and built 215,000 square feet, the increase in cars would be over 125. So by right, if we were talking about a by right concept, we'll actually have a benefit by the 70,000 square foot building.
We understand your hypothetical arguments. If we did this, it would be worth. But we're dealing with the reality of the fact that that's not going to happen any time while I'm alive.
Just very quickly, Alex has already been sworn in. We were talking about the location of the structure. Could you just describe from an engineering standpoint why it should be located in that area?
Yeah, Shelley spoke to this already. I just wanted to highlight it again. People kept talking about why does the garage need to be located here and come across the R1? And I wanted to clarify the discussion we had with the designer of the garage. As we discussed before, this area is low, and then it naturally ramps up, and this eastern property line is higher. The way that the original ramping of the current structure that's there today, and I don't know that we clarified this, but this is really an expansion of the existing structure. It's not a tear down and rebuild of the existing garage. So from the technical design of the structure, it has to be able to fit on top of the existing features. And though this is surface parking today, it physically ramps up. Basically, you start at ground level, you go up half a floor, and then your second half a floor back. It's kind of like a scissor ramp. So in order to maintain the ability to get to the upper levels, the ramp has to be located in that location to mirror the existing condition. You're actually putting all the new levels in the PB, but in order to ramp to the second level, third level, et cetera, this is the natural rise of the property, and that's the existing ramping location. The cars come in and go up, and then are on level 2. And they have to be able to continue to go this way again to go up to level 3. So the existing parking that exists here today is a portion of that ramping circulation, and it has to be maintained for the functionality to be able to get to the extra levels that are put within the PB district. So it's just an expansion of the ramp, really.
What is that part that sticks out there at the bottom of the garage?
This would just be the required elevator for ADA access from the upper levels of the garage to get down to the, it's a stair tower and elevator bump out.
So that's not part of the ramping system or anything like that?
No, the garage would basically box off here, but you basically just have to add a stair tower to the outside.
Okay, thank you. Well, we don't want an argument. If you have more facts to...
I know, and I apologize for that.
This is not a back and forth.
This is the last thing I have to say. If we, and I say we as the residents of Radnor Way, if we thought that this project was a good thing for us, we wouldn't be here giving you our opinion. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, now, we're going to need advice from our solicitor on a number of things related to this, so we're going to go into executive session and consult with him. And we'll also decide whether we're going to be in a position to decide this tonight or at a later date as part of this discussion. Depends on how complicated it gets. So for now, give us maybe 15 minutes, more or less, and we'll be back. Does the fact that this appears on our screen mean that this is what's being shown to the public, this plan? Okay, we're back in public session. I would entertain a motion. One is to be made.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that, I'd like to move that the application before us on this matter be denied for the reason that the applicant has failed to, show sufficient hardship such that the relief that is requested is appropriate. Assuming, though, that any hardship did exist, I would also move that this board find that hardship, to some extent, is self-created, as opposed to any other sort of hardship. And thirdly, the motion would also indicate that the applicant has not carried its burden to show that the relief requested would not have a negative effect on the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Radnor Township.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Call for discussion. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm just going to state that I'm not going to support the motion. I believe there is a level of hardship here based on the existing zoning of the property. I would support the variances, all the variances asked for, other than the variance regarding the location of the parking garage in the R1 district. So I will not be supporting the motion that we're currently voting on.
I do intend to support the motion. I just wanted to point out that particularly, I think that the motion has applicability to the parking garage in the R1 district, and I think that the neighboring property owners had a right of expectation regarding what could and could not be done in that property, and given the absence of a hardship, I think it's particularly appropriate for that expectation to be respected by the board.
Yeah, I want to express a concern in addition to the adverse impact on the neighborhood. Particularly, there are also severe issues involving the traffic and the burden it's going to put on the intersections of Radnor Chester Road with King of Prussia Road and with Lancaster Avenue by putting more cars on that very troubled section of road at the peak hours. So I'm concerned that the applicant also hasn't met its burden sufficiently with regard to that health, safety, and welfare issue. Any further discussion? Well, I call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay. Okay. Matter is decided. Motion, the relief is denied. Now everyone gets to go home. We'll see you again for our May meeting on the third Thursday of May.